Welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that never ends. We're so glad that you could attend because today is a potpourri edition of the Jim Cornette Experience. We're going to talk about the new wrestling that stinks and the old wrestling that smells like purty flowers. And joining me, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard podcast network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's a breath of fresh air in a sea of smelly, stagnant shows. The great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. We'll see how smelly this one is. By the time we're done, I don't even know what we're going to talk about today.
Well, it's going to be a few things. I'm afraid to move. If I move.
If you move. I wish I could say it.
Have mercy, if I could only say it on the radio. I'm afraid to move. I should be doing this podcast in a straitjacket, maybe with a muzzle, because I got the Jimmy legs. I got the yips.
They call it crazy legs, not Jimmy legs.
Well, I call it the Jimmy legs.
You want to be associated with it?
You never saw that Seinfeld.
Well, I saw the Jimmy episode, yes.
Well, no, there's also the Jimmy leg. You got the Jimmy legs. See what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I hopefully no children are present during this performance.
I usually stop at ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, just for the sake of I'm registering that maybe you ought to send the kids to bed early. And Brian Last, you, Brian, have been browbeating me and just berating me because of my movements and my noises. If I click my pen, what the fuck is that? Or if I tap, sometimes I get emotional and I make a point on my desk, or I'm doing things here. I'm moving around. I'm enjoying life. I'm living and breathing and out there, in front of everybody. And you want me to sit here silent and immobile? And I'm not supposed to smack my lips, ladies and gentlemen. And also, I got a tooth that's been knocked, the front tooth that's been knocked out 3 or 4 times. I mentioned it in the past. It's got a post in it as big as a goddamn telephone pole. And every once in a while it vibrates. I go, oh, God damn it. Shut down the show. Cornette's making noises again. You should have heard about the time of the day I had the farts. That's why I sit on a pillow now here to muffle. It's like the old detective movies in the 40s when they put the pillow in front of the gun to muffle the shot. Yeah, that's why you never hear me fart, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you finished?
I'm
For the record.
All right, go ahead and record for the record.
For the record. My concern is the listener. My concern is the listener's experience while listening to the show. Whether they're on the train, in their car.
The train was your first option?
Well, I used to listen to a lot of stuff on the train.
If you're on a fucking train, how many gardeners can you hear on a podcast? Well, you're on a goddamn choo-choo.
That's one of the secrets to our audio success. We prepare for the Long Island Railroad. If you edit for that, you're good for the rest of the world. But no, you could be anywhere. You could be in a plane. You could be running. You could be doing all sorts in traffic, angry. The audio experience
running
has to be
from
good.
Someone who's angry at you in traffic and trying to run you down with a car?
I didn't say that, but once
possible?
Again, it's possible. Anything's possible. The point
is, it's a wide world out there.
Our listeners are doing a wide array of things.
What do you think the chances are that both the guy driving the car about to run down, the guy running from him, are both listening to our podcast at the same time?
Would he regret it? The driver, would he regret it if he discovered that the man he ran down listened to the same podcast?
Oh, I thought, would you mean would he regret it if he was listening to our podcast?
No, why would he regret that? Unless it was your show. Unless it was your show.
Oh, come on now.
No, but my point is I care about the ears and the listening experience of the listener. I want them to have a pleasant time listening to our nonsense, not to hear people chewing all sorts of noises.
I'm not
Pens
chewing
going
anything.
back and forth. Sometimes it sounds like you're Keith Moon over there. Oh, let me tell you about Smackdown. Oh shit, I just knocked a bunch of shit over. Fuck. It'll be fine. I'll fix it later. I'll be on mute for a second.
Well, anyway, while Brian is over there mute, making it a mute point, you see, ladies and gentlemen, what I have to put up with here when we do this fight. Now I put my pen down. Oh, goddamn it. Sounds like
I've hurt my hand a little bit over
Put
here.
it over there. Did you hurt yourself?
Yeah, I banged this thing really fucking hard. Hey, also some modulation. I gotta stay on top of all these things because I am not only the voice of the listener, I am the person who cares about the listener. I am the guiding light to make sure that your listening experience is stellar. And I'll be here all week.
Thank you, Captain Lou Last, the guiding light of podcasting, for you care and you tend to and you take care of all of the listeners' ears and, whatever above their neck, and I'll take care of all the listeners from the neck down. How's that?
All right, have fun with that. He'll see you at C2E2, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll get them right in the heart, is what I'm saying. We'll get them right in the feels, like the kids say. We'll appeal to them down deep in their soul. Deep in their souls. I sound like Big Bad John now.
What do you think of that expression? Like, that gives me the feels.
Well, it sounds like that you were on a crowded fucking subway car and somebody gave you the feels. To me, or I've heard him sound on the Twitter, they got me in the feels. What the fuck? It sounds like something that ought to be at least a misdemeanor. Nevertheless, we've got some. Can we go on with the program now that I've established that I'm going to try to make as little noise as possible?
Remember that guy, John Fields in Baltimore?
Oh, for God's sake. He has never... That you know of, whatever you're going to say, you know of. He has never been either the perpetrator of or the recipient of the feels, as far as we're aware.
I'm unaware. For the record, I'm unaware of any of this. But
it just brought to mind, see, I was always a bit of a, depending on the way you look at it, either a smart ass or a wordsmith. Little puns, double entendres, as they say, things like that appealed to me even before I got in the wrestling business. So like 1 o'clock in the morning here in Louisville, Kentucky, I'm 18 years old or so. And back then, the only place you could get any kind of food at that time of the morning was White Castle, which pretty much qualifies for the label any kind of food. And so I go in and it's a fast food place and the young people are working there, Brian. They got their first jobs. Not all of them could be the successful Tuesday night wrestling photographer like yours truly. They were working the various shifts at the counter at the fast food place, blah, blah, blah. And I get up to place my order, and it's a young lady, probably about my age. She's, high schoolish type of level, and there her name tag says her name, Brian, is Velvet. Now, this was the 70s, the late 70s, so that was a thing that could happen. And I said, your name is Velvet? And she said, yes. I said, have you ever been felt? She didn't seem to really appreciate the witticism of that remark.
And you got there from the feels.
Feels, the past tense of feels would be felt, wouldn't it? Got me in the felt?
Weren't those the cousins of the Welches, the feels?
No, those were the Hatfields. Those were the Hatfields. They just shortened it for the Marquis, but those were the Hatfields. So they were well versed in family feuds.
That is crazy that like the Hatfields versus the McCoys, like that is the same family as the Fields.
Not the exact same people. They didn't shoot a bunch of people in Kentucky and West Virginia and then moved down to the Gulf Coast, but it was branches of the family. So, hey, that's where the statement came from. Personal issues draw money. Think about it, why don't you?
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know what there is to think about. We already know this.
Well, that's a thing to think about. See, you proved my point.
I've thought about it. I haven't proved any point.
All right, well...
You had a point?
You haven't thought about it long enough. The longer you think about it, the more you'll prove my point.
This has been Happy Talk, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Brian, I've got an email here. You don't like my conversation. Let's talk. Is that too much noise for you? Huh?
Well, no, because you've established it's paper. You have an email. Now we can talk about the level of shaking or quaking with the paper that you're doing. I don't know what's happening over there. It's bizarre.
Oh, a lot of shaking and quaking going on.
Like I said, it's bizarre what's going on over there. But certainly you've established what is making the noise. This is allowable.
Yes, okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now what's making this noise. And by the way, this may be one of our better programs because people do respond to the ones where I just don't give two shits. And I'm to that point now in my sleep deprivation fucking experiment. But anyway, this is... What?
How come no one ever doesn't give three shits?
Well, you're always going to give three shits. I mean, if you're human...
So what does that mean?
You've got to be completely inhuman not to give three shits about something. There's some goddamn level of humanity deep within me or anyone else. The point where we wouldn't fucking go that far. All right,
that was Smackdown, ladies and gentlemen.
No, this is a goddamn email from one of the listeners.
All right.
Marvin from Las Vegas. And Marvin has not yet been shot in the face.
What?
Don't you remember the Pulp Fiction? Oh, man, you shot Marvin in the fucking face.
Oh, I mean, I love that movie. I didn't realize that's what you were referencing.
No, it's the same guy. It's the same guy.
You shot Marvin out of nowhere.
They're in Las Vegas. Anyway, the title of the email is Brian Last and His Web of Lies.
Who the fuck? Fuck you, Marvin.
It says Marvin from Las Vegas, and maybe you're the one that's going to shoot him in the fucking face.
Sounds like a fake name. When was the last time a kid was named Marvin?
No, he gave me his last name, and it's equally as fucking
ridiculous,
stupid sounding.
Made up,
yeah. So
from the NXT of fucking email senders, let's go.
Yeah, so you don't want to hear about your web of lies.
I am curious what this is. I mean, I'm just denouncing Marvin in advance of the list.
Hello, Jim. See, he knew not to send it through you because it would never see the light of day. You keep your secrets carefully guarded.
What's secrets? An email from Marv? That's not a secret.
No, he's talking about wait till you listen. Hello, Jim. On Experience episode 541, Brian was telling you about Mr. Met, who is the popular mascot of the New York Mets baseball team. At the end of explaining this, Brian stated that the Cincinnati Reds copied Mr. Met for their Mr. Redlegs by adding a mustache. Do you remember uttering those comments?
I certainly do.
Well, he further states, Marvin, that is, I'd like to explain the truth. Mr. Red, who is the mustache-less version of Mr. Redlegs, was first introduced in 1955, while the New York Mets didn't introduce Mr. Met until 1963. So the Mets, in fact, copied the Reds.
Exactly wrong.
Oh, they said, please ask Brian to refrain from spreading misinformation about America's first, capital letters, baseball team. Thank you, fuck the St. Louis Cardinals, bye. Now, you take issue with Marvin from Las Vegas. This should be verifiable information here if we were to dig deeper.
You know, he won me over a little at the end with fuck the Cardinals, so I can't get too mad. Look, here's the reality of it. Mr. Red, whatever the fuck his name is, was a drawing. He was something on paper or on a patch. He was not an on-the-field mascot. We're talking mascots, not drawings. There are plenty of drawings of people with baseball fucking heads. on-the-field mascot, Mr. Met, the originator, the greatest. He's still here. He's got a fine-ass woman. He's got it going on. The Mets are winning.
He's got a fine-ass woman with about 100 stitches in her head.
So does he. He's found his type. Made by Rawlings, it turns out. No, but that's the truth. Mr. Met, first on-the-field mascot in a costume, because there was like, goofy characters on the indies or...
But is it not the concept, Brian?
No.
It's not the concept. So wait a minute. You're saying that mascot begins at birth rather than mascot begins at conception.
Mr. Met was developed specifically to be a man in a papier-mâché giant baseball head on the field as a cheerleader. The Reds running man was something drawn on paper that was used in the paper.
But then why did
But there was no expectation. There was no expectation for a living embodiment of Cincinnati, except for Moxley, I guess. The living embodiment of Cincinnati.
Oh, boy, speaking of something with 100 stitches in its head.
No, but Mr. Met was the first on the field. He's the originator. He's the greatest. Philly Fanatic, I would say, is at the top of the list, too. San Diego Chicken kind of had to part ways with the Padres, so I don't think he could really get the credit he deserves for the fame that he had. He's kind of like the Dice Clay of mascots. But he had a good match with Lawler. And that's how we bring it back to wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. But fuck you, Marvin. Mr. Met was on the field first.
I met the chicken and watched him beat the shit out of Jimmy Hart.
Oh, I wish I remembered what it was offhand. I have it written down in my notes somewhere. Austin Idol, when I did Austin Idol Live with him, he remembered what the chicken's payday was. Because, Idol doesn't forget that kind of shit.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it was in the neighborhood of $5,000 or $6,000 or something like that, because all the boys were not fucking happy at all. not happy. Anyway, so Marvin from Las Vegas, thank you for setting this straight, despite Mr. Last's efforts to...
He didn't set anything straight. You're just taking his side arbitrarily? What is this shit?
I think the mascot begins at conception, and clearly the conception was the...
If the conception did not have the thought of it being an on-the-field mascot, it does not count.
It was their symbol, their emblem. Perhaps in simpler times, they didn't know where to get a giant baseball head.
Thereof I works the Mets Walt Disney. Oh, I had a part to do with Mickey. Yeah, well, guess what? Walt Disney got all the credit because he's the one who put him on the screen. He's the one who developed Mickey Mouse. That's what I say.
Yeah. Well, Ub's family would like a word with you. All right. Anyway, real quickly, since we're on hopefully an energetic and happy path, but I will be remiss because everybody will say, well, saying anything when Joe Biden steps down. Okay, Biden out, Harris in, Biden steps down, Harris steps up. And it is still a choice of normal, sane, rational, competent, experienced people against madness, chaos, stooges, sycophants, and wannabe mango Mussolinis. And I hate it that Joe is not 15 years younger. The idea that he's been a babbling oatmeal consumer for the past 3 years is ludicrous. We heard him at State of the Union. We heard him at press conferences. He's 80 years old and he has bad days. When it was a choice of him or the filth that preceded him, it was still not a choice. And he saved us from Trump. He presided over the recovery from the pandemic. Unemployment's at an all-time low. Stock market's at an all-time high. For people who say inflation, that's why there's an inflation calculator where you can go back and see something cost in 1913 And or its equivalent buying power of the dollar today, because it always goes up. And we were due for one, which was caused by the global pandemic and the fact that a lot of people figured out they didn't want to work at Walmart and McDonald's for $6 an hour, because why? When the billionaires that own McDonald's and Walmart are making billions and billions of dollars, fuck you. So things go up in price. Biden didn't invent that. So I always figured that if we elected him and something happened, that his vice president and his experienced team would be doing the same kind of rational, reasonable shit. So nothing has changed it now for me, except now Harris is 40, not 80. And there's the babbling simpleton drooling on himself on the other side of the podium.
She's not 40.
What, 40 or 50? What? She's well preserved.
She's got to be in her mid-50s at least.
Is she really?
Hold on.
Well, find out and tell me.
She is 59 years old.
What?
She's almost your age.
Goddamn.
40. Get out of here.
Well, fuck, she's going to live to be 90. I didn't know she was that old. Look at those genetics. Anyway, I've never asked a woman her age. It's not polite, but since you brought it up. But anyway, it's fine, because we still have a choice of normal, rational, reasonable, experienced, competent people, or stooges and criminals and sycophants and the whole mess. And now what they've done is they've just energized all of the... What do women make up in the United States of America? It can't be 50.
What do they make up? Tails of rabbits and
oh, come on now. No, quit. What percentage do they make? It can't just be 50-50 even. The odds against that are probably better than 50-50. So the point is, since the Republicans have spent the past 4 years, especially with all the stooge, fanatic judges that dipshit put in place, taking away women's civil rights and whether they can decide to have a baby or not.
Approximately 51.1% of the population since 2013.
Well, that's goddamn close, isn't it? But they've still got the majority. Why would a woman vote for any of the Republicans with what they've done over the last few years? So, thank you for running Joe Biden out of office. We got a better chance now. Yay. Fucking idiots. This is still not a contest.
Does it bother you the way he was pushed out?
Yes, because I think we owe him more respect and thanks than that.
It was like a targeted campaign after a while to get him.
But the thing is, I think they started getting worried that, and Joe Biden realized this, they started getting worried that maybe he wouldn't beat this fucking moron, and we would have 4 more years of, or a lot more years than that, of this insanity. And the government would be replaced almost entirely by stooges and criminals and incompetents and fanatics. And normal people don't want that. So if they convinced him, Joe, the best thing you can do to save democracy is not try to save democracy again. And that's probably why he did it, for the good of the country.
Serious question. If Trump were to become president again, do you think Vince McMahon's going to get a pardon?
I don't even think Vince McMahon will go to trial on anything. I mean, they're such good friends, old Donnie Dipshit and Vince Headshitter, that no, you're not going to see Vince McMahon, maybe civilly liable. I think Trump would laugh if Vince had to pay some woman that he had, dallied with hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever, because they would, they have that kind of relationship where they were jousting with each other at the airport that time over the size of their airplanes. But he's not going to jail. No way Trump would let Vince go to jail because of a woman or because of any white collar crimes or criminality in the stock sale or whatever. Basically, anything Trump has been guilty of, he's not going to let Vince go to jail for.
Though, if you were booking it for wrestling, it could be an interesting turn. Trump has surrounded himself with Linda McMahon and Hulk Hogan. If he wanted to turn on Vince, now's the time. He's got the backbone of 1980s WWF behind him.
Yeah, he ain't gonna turn on Vince. If anything, Trump may be the only one that can get Vince and Linda together, because they've always wanted legitimate power in the real world. So they would probably be willing to put up with each other's presence in order to both of them serve their fucking tinted master.
Remember that image of Vince McMahon when Linda lost her last Senate attempt? Crying at the back of the stage, just standing there with all the people, and like he's the husband. He's like hiding in the back of the stage, crying.
He's crying. He's like, God damn it! He was pissed off about losing
how much?
$6 million in 1995. Can you imagine how he felt when he lost like $80 million? And he thought, plus I thought she was going to move to Washington.
Yeah, really. I thought I'd finally have the place to myself.
Yeah. Is right about that time when he bought the penthouse?
You would know better than
I don't know. When I left, I quit worrying about their real estate fucking holdings. And because as long as I didn't have to go there, I didn't even know where it was.
That's the move, though. Hey, I'm just working so hard, I can't make it home from work. I'm just going to get a luxury apartment right across the street, right here in town.
Yeah, just a giant luxury apartment. It costs a few $1 million. Save me that fucking 45 minutes or an hour to get home at rush hour. Because he was a lot closer to his house than we were.
I knew executives that did that, and the company paid for it back in the Sony Music days.
Are they still in business?
Yeah, they're still making money.
You'd wonder with practices like that. Anyway, speaking of a company that's still making money, even with practices like this, you want to talk about Smackdown for a minute?
Maybe a minute at most. I didn't really, nothing really stuck with me from Smackdown. It wasn't really much of an anything. But what do you think?
I don't care. If I'm not successful, it won't be distressful, 'cause I don't care. They don't care. They don't care anymore. They don't care what we say. We never did believe much anyway. What the fuck? They have, how many? We figured it up one time a few years ago, and we haven't heard about any mass firings. 100 and some wrestlers under contract on their roster, both Raw and SmackDown under the WWE umbrella, maybe not even taking into account NXT. And because they go to Japan, with how many people did they take to Japan? For fuck's sake. They just say, fuck it, we're going to tape the show a week in advance and give people dick all of shit. Is what they didn't even say where they were, because they were in the last place they were last week, right?
Yeah, as soon as you saw that boxer, you're like, wait a minute. There's no way they put him on the road. Yeah,
what is he just fucking, is he stalking us now? He's going to show up on somebody's front porch here next week. So, it just, oh my God. The horribleness and awfulness of it, well, not that. There was nothing unprofessional. There was nothing ridiculous that would hurt business. They haven't, just decided to hire a bunch of fucking amateurs and throw them in the ring, and with the talent going to Japan or whatever. They just had a few people work twice last week and gave us the most boring, non-meaningful program, except for Jacob Fatu that they've presented in quite a while. And so that's what would you like to just?
That was Smackdown, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, yeah, I'll give you the high points. LA Knight, in quite a bit of time, finally beat Pablo Escobar, who has the lovely Carmen Electra Jennifer Lopez in his corner. And then Logan Paul ran in and got some heat on LA Knight, and LA Knight fought back, and then Escobar stopped LA Knight, and both heels beat up LA Knight, and Logan Paul frog splashed him off the top rope and left him laying. And from this, I gather that at SummerSlam, LA Knight better win that fucking belt. Did you even pay attention?
No, not really, and I agree. He better win that belt.
But then, in the back, Logan Paul said he's going to have a surprise for LA Knight at SummerSlam. So could that be
his landlord?
Well, I'm thinking San Francisco Slim. Get that natural Northern California, Southern California rivalry going. Is that LA Knight's next program if he doesn't win the U.S. title with old San Francisco Slim?
I don't know. Panama Red?
The Panama Red made some money at one point in time. Anyway, Jade and Bianca got in the ring with the microphones. That was their first mistake. And they called out the new tag team champions of Fire and Dawn. I forget their other names. They both have two names, but I remember those. And they attacked Jade and Bianca from behind, and then the faces turned around and beat them up. And it was pretty short and not good. And then we had the Street Profits and B-Fab talking to Terrence Crawford, who is I couldn't remember from last week what he did. I didn't know whether he rapped, played basketball, was a boxer, or a fucking movie actor. But he's a boxer. And apparently, from what we heard in this program, the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world. Have you ever heard of this fucking guy?
To be fair, I don't really follow boxing anymore. The fact that they barely air it anywhere and none of the good fights ever really happen and there aren't really that many fighters built up well anymore. No, it's not really for me anymore.
Well, some of the story may lie in this hyperbolic description and the fact that they're running advertising for this fight. Because they're running commercials and apparently there's some kind of sponsorship. Not sponsorship. The boxing people are paying them the money, as Joe LeDuc said one time. They're paying me some bread to get to fucking run commercials and talk about this thing. And apparently, as part of the deal, they had Terrence Crawford come out here and knock out poor Austin Theory later on. But anyway, the story of the night, before we finish this story, was the tag team gauntlet. For a number one contender tag team title shot against poor old Gargano and Ciampa, who are about to be cannon fodder for the Bloodline.
That's their move when they have a tape show, the gauntlet match.
Yes, because they were 40 minutes into the TV show already before they started this thing, and this thing can go through goddamn however long, right? And it's just, what the fuck? So, Corbin and Cruz fought the Lucha heels, and then the Profits came out, and they were attacked by, I forgot to write down all these teams. Purely Dreary, I think. Profits beat them. Profits beat Gallows and Anderson, and then came the Bloodline. So an hour and 15 minutes into the show, we get to see the Bloodline, who at the top of the program had told Nick Aldis, are they ribbing poor old Tonga Loa now? Do they have some kind of buyer's remorse? Like, oh, fuck, this guy missed a stationary nut shot. And And now he had an eye patch on and an exaggerated gauze underneath it, and he's got an eye injury and had to pull out of the tag team gauntlet. But they said, don't worry, he will be replaced by Jacob Fatu. Do you think Jacob Fatu has worked Tonga Loa out of a spot here, or was that what they were going to do all along?
I think Tonga Loa is best. I think you said it a couple weeks ago. He's best in a suit, kind of like in the classic Ming or Big Bubba Rogers kind of role. Because shouldn't say every time, it doesn't appear to be natural to him, even though he's not a young guy and he's been doing this for a while. There seems to be just a, it's almost like he has crazy legs. You don't know what he's going to do.
He's got the yips.
He had the yips.
He throws it one place, it goes another.
Went for the guy's balls and he almost touched the butt cheek. I don't know what he was trying to do. The yips.
Wait a minute.
You could have yeet and you could have yips.
Somebody clip that audio and just put it on a loop and send it to me. He went for the guy's balls, but he just grazed his butt cheeks or whatever it was you just said.
Whatever it was that you want to hear over and over again. What the hell's going on?
Yeah. Let me hear it over and over,
baby. Oh, God. Stop being so excited. This is what I talk about when I say the bizarreness of whatever's happening.
So anyway,
But you know what, though? Now I'm a bigger fan of his than if he was just some badass, because I'm waiting for shit to happen. I'm waiting for him to, slip. I'm waiting for him to, hit a wall while he's walking. Just anything. I'm waiting for something to happen.
Nobody's ever going, what? God damn it. What was his name that dove headfirst under the ring at the Royal Rumble a few years ago?
Titus O'Neil.
Titus O'Neil.
Yeah.
He's got it. He should have just stayed under there. The longer he would have stayed under there, I bet you goddamn he would have got a standing ovation. They laughed at him because he popped right back out and fucking got in the ring and tried to act like nothing went wrong. If he'd have stayed under there till the end of the fucking match and then come out when they were fucking holding the guy's hand up, he'd have stole the show. Anyhow, so Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga ended up being the last team against the Street Profits in this gauntlet situation. And they started the match in break, but when they came back, it's obvious Fatu and Tonga don't have a lot of tag team work, because I would imagine this would be the first time that they have ever teamed up with each other, right? Where Tama Tonga's been in New Japan for ages. Jacob was under contract to MLW, blah, blah, blah. Can you think of any paths they would have crossed?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
But so nevertheless, they've got no tag team work, but Jacob, again, I think they're just putting the spotlight on him in the ring. The announcers are going over and above the call of duty to put him over. And you can tell they've got tremendous plans for him and the shit that he can do and the explosiveness he has. So anyway, finally. Oh, did you see the finish of this? Montez Ford's making a comeback on Tama Tonga, and then suddenly Tama Tonga is bent over in front of him, but apparently he was supposed to duck something, so Ford just swung over the top of the guy's head and turned backwards and put himself in a position to be waist-locked and boosted up. I was like, oh my God, it does look like Western swing dancing now.
And again, that's a tape show. They had a week to do whatever they had to do to the...
Hey, that's where I told the crew in the Smoky Mountain tapings, for the first fucking dark match, that was all to shoot cute kids and attractive women in the crowd. When something like that happened, you'd see a cute kid or an attractive woman. Sometimes the pickings were slim. We had to take what we could get, but... And then they got a four-way going, and Jacob came in and beat Ford with a pop-up Samoan drop and a springboard moonsault, boom, 1, 2, 3. The triple jump or whatever, like Daniels was doing for a while. And One of the girls does it now or whatever, but it looks more impressive when that fucking Samoan werewolf does it. So that was, they're just building the bloodline right now. That was the contribution of this program really to anything involving story. But do you want to talk about, again, old Terrence Crawford knocking Austin Theory out? Where were they last week? What town is this guy from?
Was it Cleveland? Was it Dayton?
They're going to be in Cleveland for SummerSlam.
Oh, then it wasn't there. Certainly not.
It's someplace out west. All these towns running through my mind, but
Billings, Montana.
No, it's not
Fargo,
Billings.
North Dakota.
No, it was Moosehead, Maine.
Oh.
But anyway, Waller and Theory get in the ring, doing a live promo, knocking old Terrence Crawford, and because he helped out handing a chair last week to blah, 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 blah. And they call him out to apologize. Brad, did you see he had his own video screen? He was officially prepared for that. They had Terrence Crawford and his boxing pictures up on the fucking screen on the entrance. As I mentioned earlier, they're promoting this fight that he's fighting somebody for something. And they ran a commercial and they've got him involved in this or whatever. But now they paid enough, however much it was, that he gets to come out and knock out Austin Theory, Waller talks it up and runs his mouth and then says, if you don't apologize to us, then Theory's going to knock you out. And Theory's like, hey, what? Wait a minute. And boom, almost boom. I'm sure to Theory's everlasting gratitude, the guy didn't potato him. He whiffed in front of his chin, but nevertheless, he knocks Theory out and Waller runs away. The end. They got Mike Tyson in 1998. Now they got Terrence Crawford. Have you gone to sleep?
That was Smackdown. Right?
It actually wasn't.
No, fuck.
They also had a Cody pre-tape.
Oh yeah, they had Cody in the restaurant or whatever it was.
Yes, it was a bar. Which is nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that Cody ought to be drinking milk, but he said, I'm here on my tour in Japan. And he's in a bar. There was not one Japanese characteristic or anything that I saw. It was just they did it with a very well-lit fucking, hotel bar. I don't know where that would have been.
Yeah, that was the thing. I'm in the bar in the middle of the day.
But that was about SummerSlam. And then the main event was actually Mia and Bailey against Jackson Stratton, which sounds like a kind of power drill, doesn't it? Or some type of heavy equipment, machinery, gasoline operated. Jackson Stratton. Tackle any heavy job. Wonder if Jackson Stratton should start a line of battery operated household appliances for the housewives across the country.
Again, I don't know where your mind goes. Who was their opponent? It was Jackson Stratton versus Mia and who?
Mia Yim and Bailey.
And Bailey, that's right.
And Bailey. But what they did was they jumped Mia Yim beforehand and beat her up on the side of the ring down on the floor. And then Bailey came out and had a handicap match against them for 10 minutes before the fucking Mia Yim got back up to the apron to take the tag. People recovered and crawled out of car wrecks on the interstate in quicker time. Nobody went to goddamn help her up. They let her lay there for 10 minutes. You think Mia's still alive? I don't know, but let's not ruin the camera shot. And then she gets up and takes the tag and makes a comeback after 10 minutes. Oh, and then the refrigerator basically bonsai'd Bailey after she'd been hit with the briefcase. And that was the end. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, this
Fox
show...
Net, no, let's ask this question, though. Are they just like, well, we're almost done on Fox, so fuck it? Or are they, we're so far ahead in this thing, we don't give a shit? What, one boring ass show with nothing going on is not going to run our audience off. We're that conceited now. There's no way they could have planned ahead with these previously scheduled situations that a company that's worth $8 or $9 billion could have said, hey, let's add a fucking TV taping the day after our last TV taping and then take a couple of days off and go to Japan. Because, instead of subjecting the people that had already seen a live Smackdown to some taped bleh and just throwing it away for the TV audience. Is my question to you. Was there a thread of a question in there?
I mean, it was a nothing show. They weren't in town. The contract's finishing up. It'll probably do a relatively respectable rating, I would think. I don't know if it's just going to die because people didn't get a live show and they didn't get anything happening at all. We'll see. Does Fox have any interest in his Terrence Crawford fight that they've been promoting for 2 weeks on the show?
Well, somebody's making some money off of it over there.
It's on DAZN, I see here.
I always thought that was DAZN. DAZN.
The fight is Saturday, August 3rd. When's SummerSlam?
Saturday, August 3rd.
So they're promoting something against them?
They're promoting that's what I've been saying all along. They're getting some money. They're against SummerSlam with this fight. I forgot to bring that up. Thank you for mentioning that. But they're running commercials and they're fucking having this guy come out and knock out the fucking talent. How much does that have to be worth? And who are these fucking people? Terrence Crawford and what's his name that he's fighting?
He's fighting Israel Madrimov.
Well, a household name, ladies and gentlemen.
Early start time.
If you're undergoing speech therapy, that's a name that's on everybody's lips.
Early start time for this Riad season card.
Oh.
From Los Angeles. So now I may tell you who's putting up the money for this.
The Riad season card from Los Angeles. Now, that's unwieldy in itself. Saudi Arabia is behind this, but is the Riad season a brand of or a company name? Or
Riad season is a series of entertainment, cultural, and sporting events held in the Saudi Arabian capital of Riyadh. The event was introduced in 2019 by the General Entertainment Authority. You will always listen to them. As
yes.
Part of,
yes, the Entertainment Authority.
As part of the larger Saudi Seasons initiative in support of Saudi Vision 2030.
Well, how does that, but it's in Los Angeles?
Well, yeah, that's how they infiltrate the states.
What the goddamn hell? Oh, my God. So, how much money now are they paying to get this fucking guy and what was the other guy's name? Who's he? What's he? It's Itchy
Madam. The Madam.
God. Who are these? Have you ever heard of these fighters before?
Again, I'm not currently following boxing, so I'm not the best person to ask.
But no, if to spend that much money, we ought to be talking about Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Floyd Mayweather. People that you can't avoid hearing their fucking name.
Riad Season 2024. Riad Season will be hosting the 6th King Slam of October 2024, a tennis tournament. Yeah, featuring all the big stars. Nadal, Djokovic. Yeah, so they're doing the tennis tournament.
Did you say Djokovic?
I didn't say Djokovic.
What did you say?
Djokovic.
Who is that?
He's a tennis player, but anyway, you should know your tennis, Mr. Cornette.
Did he ever beat Bobby Riggs?
They're doing a tennis tournament. They have the WWE Crown Jewel November 2nd from the Kingdom Arena. Tyson Fury versus, again, I don't follow boxing currently, Usyk. USYK. Alexander Usyk.
Usyk.
That'll be in December. There are 12 zones in Riad season. The Boulevard World, Boulevard City, Kingdom Arena, Ramla, Terraza.
Okay.
Riyadh,
Do I need to call
the Wonder Garden?
Are you having a stroke now?
The Wonder Garden. These are their arenas, I guess. The Food Truck Park, Riad Zoo.
As a matter of fact, when you go to visit, they don't let you leave.
Well, that's it.
Well,
and also the Black Hat Middle East and Africa Cybersecurity and Hacking Convention is annually held.
Wait a minute. The fucking hackers and cybersecurityers have a convention now? Shouldn't they try to keep that shit quiet?
It says here, Black Hat Middle East and Africa. A 3-day cybersecurity and hacking convention held in Riyadh.
Where what, hackers from all over the world come and show their wares?
I don't know, but they're spending money. They have lots of money, and it's on display all over the world.
All right. Well, I'm sure Terrence Crawford is a heavy favorite to win this thing. Just because he knocked out Austin Theory with one punch and didn't even touch him. So the wind, so you can imagine what he can do to another human being if he actually hits him.
That really was the end of Happy Talk earlier, ladies and gentlemen.
That certainly was. But I'll tell you this right now, and you may not realize it, Brian, but the highlight of that program was the Samoan werewolf Jacob Fatu. And let me ask you a question, Brian Last. How do you shave a werewolf?
With a silver bullet.
No, you kill him with a silver bullet. If you kill him, then his hair won't grow.
A silver razor.
If you have a werewolf in the family, you got to keep them properly groomed and make sure they not only the conditioner to get the proper sheen on their coat, but also you remember that old commercial from the 70s? How do you handle a hungry man? The man handlers. So some kind of line of frozen dinners. They were larger than, how do you handle a hairy werewolf? You handle a hairy werewolf with Harry's. Harry's.com and the fine shaving products that are contained therein. Well, they're not really contained on a website. They're listed, offered, proffered to the public on the website Harry's.com. No apostrophe there, by the way, in case you were up in the air about that. And right now, folks, when you're going out in public, you got to do something about your fucking faces. I'm seeing a lot of you people when I go at my daily or weekly rounds to the store or the post office. A lot of you people just have given up. You don't care anymore. And I feel that you're being premature. From the looks of some of you, you got another 2 or 3 good years left within you. So try to clean up a little bit. Shave your face, men. Put on some lotion, some body wash, some hair gel, all of the fine products that Harry's has to make you look more palatable, at least. I mean, let's face it, there's only so much you can do without plastic surgery, but you'll look more palatable. You'll definitely smell better than you do right now. And also, it's a feeling. You get it right in the feels, gentlemen out there, when you got a clean face and your all of your parts are clean and slick and shiny, sometimes almost translucent. Anyway, right now, Harry's is going to give you the trial set that normally $13. You're going to get an ergonomically designed razor. The handle fits right in your hand, and the blades, it's a 5-blade cartridge that stays sharper longer because those German sadists make it in a special factory over there. And you know how hard-hearted they are. They want these things to be able to cut a cunt hair in half. And you also get the foaming shave gel and the travel cover on the razor so you don't slice some kind of major artery for only $3 if you go right now to harrys.com/JCE. A $13 trial set for $3. Harrys.com/JCE. And again, the other self-care product. Because, Brian, if you don't take care of yourself, who's going to take care of you? And when you get to be about 75, somebody's going to come in and start performing some kind of routine maintenance a couple of times a week. But that's probably all it's going to be at that point. So until then, you're going to have to just fucking take care of yourself, guy. You can smell like wood and ground and rock. I'm sorry, redwood, wildlands, and stone with the body washes that are scented in such a fashion. And they've got an extra strength, and that's the important part. High quality, amazing smelling deodorant, $5. What the fuck is $5? I'll pay you $5 just to use this shit before you stand next to me in line at Paul's Market. So altogether, folks, you got to go out right. And I say folks, I mean men. Because any of the women out there that also need a 5-blade razor to shave and some foaming shave gel to shave whatever hirsute area, we're not going to judge you. If you wanted to try it out for your significant other male who also might have sprouts in unique places, just, fucking apply your imagination, ladies and gentlemen. Harrys.com/JCE. Did I make that clear, Brian?
You made that clear, except for the promo code. What's that promo code one more time, Jim?
/JCE is the promo code. I'm making it Harrys.com/JCE.
Harrys.com/JCE. I just wanted to make sure we had some clarity there.
Well, there's all kinds of clarity to people who were listening to the words that were coming out of my mouth. See, now you're making me pound the desk to make a point.
This audio.
Again.
Stop, Jace. I'm so sorry. I don't know what he's doing this time.
You're making me do this because
I'm making you.
I'm getting fresh. See, you made me do this. I didn't want to do it.
Well, you're going to want to do it with Harry's. That's the point.
You're going to want to do it with Harry's, especially after they use Harry's product on Harry's. Harry.
What's that promo code, Jim? What's that promo code, Jim?
JCE. All right. Well, before we continue with more frivolity and freewheeling discussion, Brian, we got to catch up on last weekend's biography. We didn't have time on the drive-through. We got to talk about it because it was on Mark Henry and the biography on, as you say, AEW, but it was actually on the A&E network. At least, again, this is another guy who they have not beaten to death with the rivals and the biographies and the feuds and the legends and the heels and all the other stuff where you could see some new material for once. And, it was 2 hours where we usually laughed that like Lawler had a 50-year career and got an hour and The Miz got 2 hours, but Mark had more to tell to his story than just getting right into wrestling. So, I didn't think this was padded. But did you get a chance to see the program?
I did, yes.
Well, the only... And, of course, Bruce Pritchard was in it as, representative of the office talking head, or in this case, talking chins. But I don't even know if I tell you this story, if I can convey how fucking much of a kick I still get about thinking about this. I was a member of the creative team when Bruce Pritchard told me that they were going to sign Mark Henry and sponsor him for the Olympics. And at the time, the WWF creative team consisted of Vince McMahon and his stooges, me and Bruce Pritchard, and Pat Patterson would stop by usually maybe the week before a pay-per-view, and Jim Ross would drop in because he was booking the house show lineups, and he was foolishly trying to follow the television that Vince would change all the time. And that was it, right? And so I just started there spring of 96 or deep winter. So I was still getting used to the way that things were pitched and the shit that they talked about with straight faces. And Bruce told me, hey, we're going to sponsor this guy in the Olympics, this Olympian. And I had never heard of Mark, and had not met Mark at this time, and I'm not knocking Mark. I'm trying to tell a funny story about Bruce telling me about Mark. But he said, we're going to sponsor him. He's an Olympian. I said, oh, okay. He's a weightlifter. Okay. And he can, he can dunk a basketball and he weighs 400 pounds. I said, oh, okay. And we're going to, as soon as he gets out of the Olympics, and we're going to, get him in a ring. Okay. And we're going to sign him for 10 years for $250,000 a year. And that's when I said, what? Because in 1996, they weren't giving out guaranteed contracts at all. And in the program, it gets mentioned that, Mark had the first. And I said, what? But you got to pay him for 10 years. It wasn't even the $250,000 a year. It was the 10 years. I'm like, I've never even seen this guy before. What if he's not any good? And Bruce would say, but the thing is, he can dunk a basketball. He would always go back to that. Like that was, I can't convey to you the glee that you would see on Bruce's face when he said those words. It was like, I didn't know you were that big a basketball fan, Bruce. And I said, but the thing is, it's going to get heat with the boys. This is going to get out. If you give a guy that's not even had a lesson yet, a 10-year contract think of the 20-year contract with Brett that was going to go sideways about a year and a half later.
It's like they were competing with Vern, but he already went out of business.
Yes. And I said, what if he's not any good? And I said, but he said, you don't understand. He might go, the NBA might sign him. I said, let the NBA sign him if he wants to play basketball instead of wrestle, because we don't know if he can wrestle.
Yeah, by the way, no mention of the NBA in this biography episode.
Well, no, we saw him dunking a basketball. That much was true, but I don't know if it was in the fucking state finals for the national title or whatever. But that's the thing, is that Vince got the idea, want to sponsor an Olympian. Vern had done it before, but not to that level of financial commitment. I think, maybe Patera got $200 a week, maybe.
And you can live in my barn.
Yeah, and the bedroom in the barn. But so they went whole hog with it, and that's what Mark's, the first 5 years of his career from 1996 to 2001 really went backwards. And we've talked about it when we talked about him before, that, the way that he got into business, and unfortunately what happened and what transpired, it took him that 5 years to go back and get his basic training and really understand all the facets of the business, how to think about it, how to do it, how to get along in a locker room. They started him out in a feature match on pay-per-view, and 5 years later, he was in OVW, in developmental. And they honestly couldn't tell. They did tell the story of some of his setbacks, and, that he was a little full of himself or not knowing how to fit in when he first got into business in the locker room. But they couldn't really tell the full story because it was kind of an indictment on the way that they did him to begin with, and why they had to keep revamping him and trying to figure out something new to do with him because of the path they took him on. But anyway, I digress. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Did you, you're not old enough to have seen Vasily Alexiev in the Olympics in real time, are you, kid?
No, I don't believe so, because also I don't really watch the Olympics. It's not my thing.
Well, see, here's the thing. In 72 and 76, not so much in 68 because I was like fucking 6. But in 72 and 76, I watched the Olympics not only because they were on network television and we only had 3 back then, but also because some of the guys were either dallying with wrestling, had been publicized by the wrestling magazines, boxing because of Ali here, blah, blah, blah. So when I was a kid, the 72 and 76 Olympics were cooking. You saw Chris Taylor, you saw Ken Patera, and it was marketed well by, I think ABC had it both those years, and, it was patriotic. So we watched the Olympics, but Alexiev was a fucking giant beast. And he was the goddamn Russian weightlifter. And he was, the one that Patera and everybody else was, being compared to. But Mark Henry admired him for being because Mark was a big kid, and they talked about how he was so ridiculously big that the other kids picked on him for being ridiculously big. But and as wrestlers, he liked Andre and the big guys, the strong men. And when he was here, he would ask, about old time strong men and, different people in wrestling or just the circus type. He was really, because of his background with Terry Todd, who worked with Paul Anderson when he was the world's strongest man back in the 50s and had all that publicity. And then he got into wrestling. Am I still getting ahead of myself?
No, Thelma Todd. Keep going.
Thelma, no, not Thelma Todd.
I know.
She was the unfortunately murdered actress in the 30s, but she made a great comedy team with Zazu Pitts.
She was great in Monkey Business by the Marx Brothers.
But it was Jan Todd, who was Terry Todd's wife, who was one of the people interviewed for this program, because when Mark got into weightlifting and his high school strength coach to save him from getting in trouble, then he attracted attention of Terry Todd, who was a famous strength and conditioning coach and a weightlifter, and he worked with Mark for a while and trained him for the Olympics, where in 92 he came in 10th. And then, for the next round, Terry Todd had known, as I said, he had worked with Paul Anderson in the past. He knew Vince through Andre the Giant because he had, I think, wasn't that a famous Sports Illustrated piece that Terry Todd wrote on Andre?
Yeah. He wrote it, and those photos are the ones you still see around. Andre holding the beer can, and then Vince Sr., Vince Jr., and Andre like having a good time at wherever, Smith and Walensky's, wherever they were.
Yeah, so anyway, he said, hey, Mark, you could be doing this. And Vince agreed to sponsor him for the Olympics. And he went to Atlanta in 96, tore a rib muscle, still finished the meet, but did not obviously win the gold medal. But, they made the point that Mark never did steroids. And again, that is true. He was all natural for, good, bad, or indifferent. He couldn't really go all the way, I don't think, in Olympic weightlifting, probably with being all natural and starting late and et cetera, et cetera. But nevertheless, there is where the way they debuted him, and he even admitted he had almost no training. Literally, the reason why that they picked Jerry Lawler to work with Mark and that was Mind Games, right, in Philly, September 96. Lawler could work with a guy, and had many times in Memphis a big, strong guy that he could call basic stuff to, and they had obviously had Mark in a ring and showed him somewhat how to hit the ropes and things. But I mean, this was just zero level of training, and they were able to pull it off with Lawler calling it, because Vince insisted on having him off of the Olympics, having him on that show. And again, yes, I know it'll be acceptable, palatable, whatever, with the King, but then what are we going to do with it? Well, then we're going to have him train in the warehouse. This was before developmental that had become a thing. And, I suppose if you show him on television, then, and put all this, attention on him, and then he goes away for however long, then it's, And then at the same time, if you put him in the ring right now with anybody else but Lawler, it'd be god awful. So, but Vince wanted to do it. So they debuted him against Lawler on that pay-per-view. And then they put him in training at the warehouse. And remember, Brian, how they mentioned that he broke his ankle. But remember how I've said I hated the real ropes on a ring? I like the cables.
Yeah, you've always said that.
Many times. Well, he's 400 fucking pounds. He hits the goddamn real ropes that they're hitting in not just a 2-hour house show every night, but they're using this as a training ring. And the rope breaks and he gets caught and his leg goes sideways when he takes the bump and he breaks his ankle. So by the time that he had his debut on pay-per-view, beats Jerry Lawler, then goes into training, then gets hurt, then recuperates from that, then continues his training. I think we worked it out one time. He had like 2 matches in his first 18 months. So he made $375,000 for 2 matches. And that's why the boys then were like, what the fuck, this fucking guy? Combined with Mark. Mark's always a friendly guy, always laughing, always joking, but he came in not realizing what kind of atmosphere he was in, or that these guys would be mad because they've worked for years and years to not get the goddamn guarantee that he got, but walking in from doing something else. And that's where they started, while he was recuperating from his broken ankle. He'd come to TVs on crutches, right? 400 pounds with a broken ankle. So he needs the crutches. If he sat down on like an equipment case or something and leaned his crutches up, some of the boys would get his attention and somebody else would sneak up and steal his crutches and put him out in the middle of the ring, and he'd have to figure out a way to go get them. And they did do the treatment of one of his Subway sandwiches one time, which probably tasted a little shittier than normal Subway sandwiches taste. Because he wasn't doing himself any favors because he just walked into it and he didn't know what the fuck. So that's why that.
Yeah, but still, they shouldn't have shit in a sandwich.
Well, no, but they were shitting in fucking everybody's sandwich because that's what they shouldn't have shit in anybody's sandwich. But that's what they were doing when you give them an opening. And it was because the company did not prepare him in any way for the business. That's why Brett took him to Calgary and had him up there for a while, teach him how to act as much as work. And then, when he finally got back, the end of 97, and he joined the Nation of Domination, then he could be around those guys. And he started to learn more of the in-ring with Simmons and, D'Lo. Already had some experience at that point in time. The Rock was new, but he cut the promos. So he started getting a little background and training there. And then the fucking Jerry Springer acolytes took over and he became Sexual Chocolate and was having an affair with Mae Young. And I think that's why
he loved it. It seemed like he was happy with it. He came up with the idea, and obviously that's one of the more memorable things of that era was his affair with Mae Young leading to her birth of a hand.
But now he came up with the idea because he and the boys were laughing about himself being attractive to the ladies, and it's another thing that then Vince hears about and can't resist and goes too far with and lets other people go too far.
And that was the band in Coming to America, Sexual Chocolate.
But think about this. At that point, then people started laughing at him. Here you've got this giant, world's strongest man, Olympic weightlifter, blah, blah, blah. And people are laughing at him. And I'm sure he had a lot of fun, but that's why that basically at that point in 2000, they'd run out of things to do with him, and they sent him to OVW. He'd gotten too heavy. They wanted him to lose weight. And he still didn't really, he'd skipped over all the basics of how to not only to do wrestling, but think about wrestling. And he just had to learn on the job. So it helped his physical conditioning, but at the same time, it helped him learn more how to think. And he he started appreciating the wrestling business better then because he saw what guys were doing to get there that he had completely skipped over with the way that things had happened. And it's the point where one time when we were still in the old building, before we moved into the new place, he bought the boys a new air conditioner for the locker room that they could stick in the wall because it was so fucking hot. And he was the one, because he was still making $250,000 a year, and here these guys are, trying to get $300 to $500 a week. But that's when he became more popular with guys, learning not only kind of how to, he was actually a leader at some point, at that point, because he was more experienced than a lot of them. So he took more responsibility in that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but no mention of OVW at all in the biography.
Well, no, because there's the thing. They talked about when he got hazed when he first got into business, and then he got hurt, but they couldn't just say, and then we had to send him back to developmental, start from scratch 4 years into this thing. That's why I'm saying it would have been an indictment of the company. How the fuck have y'all botched this guy up that bad? But at that point, two things happened. One, he got down to 390 pounds. It was the lightest he has been in his wrestling career. They wanted us to get him to lose weight, and we did, and he did, and was doing leapfrogs and monkey flips. And then we used him both as a babyface and a heel. He was a heel here, but I liked him as a babyface better because he had the great smile, and the kids liked him, and he was a big guy that could be friendly. And he was a name, not only from wrestling, from national television, but also the Olympics, for personal appearances, sponsors, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, we used him as both. We said, okay, he's in great shape. He's a joy to work with. Here you go. And the first thing, they got the idea for him to enter the Arnold Classic, and he bulked up again. He gained like 70 pounds back for the fucking Arnold Classic, but he won it. So, but that was that. Now it's 2002, so now they've really decided, okay, we're going to do something fucking with him now. But it took all that long to get him going in the right fucking direction.
This thing did a better job of building up his strongman career than anything they ever did on TV.
Well, yeah, and I didn't know why that, again, everybody had to be a fucking comedy guy in the Springer era, but he was legitimately the strongest man in the world, and he could do shit like that. So we had him doing stuff in OVW, punching the fucking 10-penny nail through the board with his bare hand, and bending things and lifting things, whatever the fuck, because that's what you do with the world's strongest man. But
well, what'd you think of the way Vince was fucking with him? Where they got him a pan they didn't think he'd be able to fold, or they sent him out to the ring and just ended the show. Like, it seems like he was fucked with his entire run, and seemingly from the bottom up to the very top, more than most wrestlers.
Well, Vince fucking with him then, when they were talking about that, was different, and way after when they fucked with him. Vince gave him a fucking red carpet at the beginning because he had an element of Tony Khan in him. Vince did, brand new toy.
But that's what I'm saying, though. He was fucked with at the beginning, and he was fucked with years later by the boss of the company.
When he started fucking with him years later, it was Vince's goddamn weird thought process that he wanted him to be pissed off. He didn't want him to be happy Mark. He didn't want him to be blasé Mark. He wanted him to be rah Mark. Because remember, he said they ribbed him and left him standing in the ring, and he came back and got pissed off, and then Vince said, that's what I want. And then there's the Hall of Pain and all that other shit. It's one of Vince's many weird things that he does. He wants to piss people off sometimes.
Well, again, Vince was the one behind apparently giving him a frying pan they didn't think he'd be able to bend, and he struggled with it, and eventually he did it, which shows how strong he was. But why is he fucking with a guy doing something on live TV?
I don't know if that was live. Might have been a pre-tape. That wasn't live when they sent him out stand in the ring.
All right, that's all right. That's
when they sent him out stand in the ring, that didn't make air. See, that's Vince will fuck with you to get the goddamn emotions.
How would you react if you were standing in the ring waiting for something and then Tony Schimmel just shuts down the show?
I would have actually gone over in the front row, tried to grab some fan's popcorn, and just sat down at the desk and put my feet up and stayed till everybody had left. But anyway, and then basically the retirement promo that even fooled his family. He had his family, his teenage sweetheart. I remember him talking about her 20-something years ago in OVW. They were together then, and his kids, and, that's where Vince had talked him into one more deal, and then he went in the Hall of Fame in 2018. And then I couldn't believe that they mentioned AEW. What'd you think about that?
I think they're trying to tell somewhat of a cohesive story. They mentioned AEW, they didn't mention OVW. So that's interesting. But,
no, it's just because they...
the truth is this would have been a good 90-minute documentary, and they had to stretch it to 2 hours. And after a while, it was just a lot of footage of him talking to his family.
Coaching kids, too. Yeah. He's big on coaching kids. But no,
and that's wonderful, but it was a lot of footage of it.
Again, I understand why they didn't mention OVW at the start, but I was surprised they mentioned AEW, except to answer the question of, well, if he was in the Hall of Fame and everything was so great, where's he been? And basically, Mark said he wanted to teach, but he had to do what was best for his family. Basically meaning I had to take more money, but what are they letting him do or teach or say over there? When's the last time we saw Mark Henry in public on a wrestling program?
Oh, no, I thought and I could be wrong, wasn't he one of the names released or not renewed, whatever it was?
Okay, well then...
Let me double check on that.
Double check on that, please, there, roving reporter last, because we don't want to give... But he was in AEW for a long fucking time, and he didn't do a whole fucking lot. So I'm wondering what they were even letting him do besides cash their check. That was the reason why that he went there to begin with.
Yeah, he announced in May that he has left AEW.
Okay, so 2 months ago. So that by the time that this was all pre-shot and etc., whatever, but apparently they didn't listen to a lot of his lessons. If you don't listen to lessons, Brian, you can be lacking in your learning.
Okay, like Larry Looper?
Well, no, he was the best one of the Loopers. I never liked Lou. And truthfully, I wasn't much on his cousin Goober Looper. You remember him?
I don't.
He lived down in the holler.
I don't know anything about him. No.
All right. So that brings up an interesting thing, Brian. Did you have any further comments on the Mark Henry biography in total?
No, it was a very well done piece overall. Very likable, Mark Henry, a guy you want to root for. And yeah, it was a very nice episode of biography. I don't know what else there is to say.
Well,
no mention of Jim Cornette or OVW. That was my other big takeaway.
Well, again. But the thing is that I think it was good. I think it was fine. But sometimes you want something, Brian, that's just flat out awesome. Just plain awesome. Just when you just delve into it, you just open it up and you go, holy mackerel, the awesomeness is cascading down my body. All over my body with awesomeness. Haven't you ever had that feeling?
Not exactly that, although it is certainly exciting when something awesome arrives at your doorstep.
It's tingling. It gets you in the feels, doesn't it?
I don't know about that either, young man, but...
Well, folks, if you'd like to be felt up by something that comes out of a box in your mailbox...
That's not how I would put it in any way, no.
Well, it makes you feel good. You're up. They say when you're happy, you're up, and when you're sad, you're down. So it's going to make you feel up. So if you'd like to get felt up, by something that you can get in your mailbox on a monthly basis, then you go over to boxofawesome.com and you check out the wonders that are contained therein. Because Box of Awesome, from our friends at Bespoke Post, ladies and gentlemen, have a new premium lineup of Box of Awesome collections. Cool gear, as the kids say, in every box with Box of Awesome Premium. They're doubling the fresh finds now because they're going out and they're finest. They're curating is what they're doing. These fine handcrafted items from all over the country, all over the world, from a variety of artisans and craftspeople. And well, some of these things may be high quality replicas. Every once in a while, you know, some master forger comes through. But most of the time, it's just mom or pop, and they're making these things. And then Box of Awesome sends them to you at stellar discounts, up to 30% off or more. And, you know, again, that's all the work you have to do. You just answer a couple of questions. What are you into, Brian? Every time you get on there, you talk about how you like to gut people like a fish. You like to cut them from asshole to appetite.
That is not what I say, and that's not what you'll say, and that's not an appropriate thing to type into any website, ladies and gentlemen.
You like to
keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself.
People like Jack in Whitechapel.
What?
But let's say that somebody else, you know, just wants to fillet a fish with that type of knife.
Where's Marvin?
They've got Marvin just got shot in the face. But anyway, at Box of Awesome, if you like culinary delights, you like cooking in the kitchen, you like spices, you like handcrafted crafts things, you like knives, you like all manner of things, well, boy, howdy, they got them. You tell them what you like, they'll send you things that you like, and they won't cost a lot of money, and they'll help small businesses, and they will bring joy to your life, joy to the people in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. Every month in your mailbox, and it's free to sign up. You can skip a month or cancel anytime you want to. And why would you be so rude? And think about these people's feelings. Mom might never recover. She was in the bedroom crying when she heard you canceled. Fucking prick. But anyway, and you can get 15% right now off your first Box of Awesome when you sign up at boxofawesome.com. and enter the code JCE at checkout. Boxofawesome.com, code JCE, 15% off your first box. And again, whether you're like Brian Last and you want to just slash your way across the countryside like some kind of mad science fiction villain, or whether you'd like to have some nice barbecue spice rub to put on your ribs, Box of Awesome. They'll fix what ails you.
Yeah, those two options.
Well, sometimes you might want to combine those things. Now, let's say, you know, you're gonna get into cannibalism. You could slice and dice your way across the countryside, laying waste to innocent sheep herders, and then put the barbecue spice rub on them when you set them on the grill that night.
All right, Box of Awesome. Lots
of awesome things. You're not even going to argue with cannibalism?
I don't know what's going on. Again, you're having an episode where you're having an episode. You're revealing to the audience the true villain is you. I remain the guiding light, and I will tell you that if you want something awesome on your doorstep, or let's say in your mailbox, each and every month, filled with who knows what other than something you will like, Box of Awesome is the place to go, and Jim is the man to tell you how to get there.
Code JCE at boxofawesome.com. Did I ever tell you Jeffrey Dahmer once invited me to a dinner party at his house?
No.
But I got there late, and boy, did I get the cold shoulder.
All right.
All right. You know, Brian, we got all kinds of listeners out there. We used to, at least, that ask questions. We haven't got to some of them on the drive-through. What are some of the things that the Cult of Cornette listeners out there are asking about these days that we can tidy up here on the program?
Oh boy, let's get to some questions. I'm totally prepared, ladies and gentlemen. Jim, one topic that a lot of listeners have sent in, I have an email here, sent to cornydrivethru@gmail.com. This is from Matthew Maitland. Interested in your thoughts, Jim, on jobber now being a derogatory term. And this is a tweet attached from Dustin Rhodes. Please stop using the term jobber. It is extremely disrespectful to everyone who is putting their bodies on the line each week. All of us are enhancement talent.
Oh, good Lord.
We enhance each other's careers. Show compassion to everyone that steps in this business and works hard, enhancing others.
Oh, Jesus.
Hashtag keep stepping.
Yeah, right on out the door. No, I like Dustin. I'm not knocking Dustin, but goddamn, has everybody just lost track of their fucking senses? And everyone has gotten so sensitive. Jobber can be used as a derogatory term, as can a lot of other regular words, depending on how they're applied and in what context or what individual or people or whatever the case. But no, this is another example of something that nobody thought twice about at one point in time that now has somehow become an issue because people got too many things to fucking worry about that aren't important. And this comes from knowing many jobbers. Again, in the 80s or the 70s, guys would say about themselves, hopefully I'll go to TV next Saturday in Atlanta and do some jobs, or I'm one of the guys that goes over and does jobs for Mike Jackson. Or it was an industry term anyway that none of the fans were using that to begin with, so it wasn't like that they were using it as derogatory comments about somebody else's favorite. He's a jobber. They didn't use that word to begin with. It was only in the business. And the jobbers knew that they were jobbers, job guys. And a promoter would call a fucking guy that had some guys. Hey, can you get me 5 guys to do jobs on TV? Sure, whatever. And, I'm not saying that at some point, some guy in the locker room would look at some other guys. He's nothing but a fucking job guy. But it wasn't a goddamn mortal insult of what the fuck? Why is this an issue now? It's just a common term that's been used in the wrestling industry inside forever, and nobody was upset about it on either side of the fence. And now it's a goddamn debate.
Yeah, his father certainly used that term a good deal.
Yes, and sometimes you'd see Dusty's lineup. He'd like versus Jobber or whatever. You didn't even fill the people's names in until you saw who showed up because it was just a breathing person to do a job, which, as we know, means to lay down, to get beat for the star that you're trying to push. Do a job for him.
Yeah, it's an industry term that in the era of newsletters and the emergence of smart fans got out, is kind of used beyond wrestling even. It's weird now. You see headlines in the newspaper. I saw one about, it was a baseball story about the Mets getting someone in a trade. Mets acquire longtime heel. Like, what? It's just weird. You now see wrestling terminology in everyday life. Jobber, jabroni is like one of those things, but it started inside. So is Dustin saying this to fans or is he saying this to other wrestlers?
I have no idea. He's trying to make sure nobody gets their feelings hurt. And that's another jabroni, as you mentioned, is just wrestling slang for jobber, and The Rock didn't invent it. The Rock picked it up when he was a kid. Lawler was saying it on his interviews on Memphis TV in the 70s. Call it, whoever that he was working with, some fucking jabroni. And it existed in wrestling for years and years and years, and suddenly now people are getting their feelings hurt. If you're Brian, if you're in acting, are you not allowed to be called an extra? Because that's what Vince used to call them. He tried to get away from job guys and into extras because that sounded more TV. But now if this is the case with the wrestlers, then are the actors allowed to be called extras, or is that disrespectful?
Well, here's the other issue. Jobber, enhancement talent, extra, whatever you want to say. Are there even that many on wrestling TV nowadays? There's a difference between job guys and guys who always do jobs. Is he saying they're being called jobbers? I mean, that's the thing. Like, what? We don't know what he's saying, obviously, but it's bizarre because who's he saying this to?
And well, a lot of times another word for job guys is local. You can see the lineup and so-and-so versus local. Some guy that shows up and get his ass beat. He's from there. We didn't have to fly him in, whatever. It's not being disrespectful. It's being realistic to these guys and what their standing is in the community at the current time. And that doesn't mean it can't never change, because a lot of the major stars of any goddamn decade started in the business doing jobs, getting beat, jerking a curtain every night, if they even got booked every night.
All right, well, that was the Dustin Rhodes jobber question taken care of there. Jim, another question here from the Cult of Cornette. This was sent to cornydrivethrue@gmail.com from Kristen O. My husband mentioned to me that the man who used to live across the street from him when he was a child passed away several years ago. And he had heard...
Has she just heard about it now?
And he had heard that the guy used to be a wrestler in the Nashville Territory days.
Uh-oh. One of these stories, huh?
According to my husband, as well as several of the comments left on the man's online obituary, the man's name was Tommy Reynolds, and he wrestled as the Midnight Angel. Based on the fact he was born in 1947...
Oh, boy.
I guess he would have been wrestling anywhere from about the late 60s to the mid or late 80s. However, I can't find any information on him or any evidence of him
whatsoever
or any evidence of him wrestling in Nashville shows during that time period. I know he must have done at least a little bit since I'm seeing other people post about their memories of him, but I can't find anything to prove it. Jim, I figured if anyone would know anything about the Midnight Angel or a Tommy Reynolds wrestling in or around Nashville, it would be you. Please let me know if you know or can find out anything.
Well,
what do you know and what can you find out?
Well, I can't find out anything. And I know enough to know we don't need to call Scott Teal as an expert on Nashville wrestling, for there was no Midnight Angel. If this guy was born in 1947, he would have been wrestling by the early to mid 70s at least, and all Nashville cards, I've seen them. I was watching the televisions. They've been documented in various publications. Tommy Reynolds or Tommy Runnels? How was that spelled?
Tommy Reynolds, Reynolds.
Yeah, no. No.
Now, when you say you're familiar with who worked those shows in Nashville during those years, beyond Goulas and Jarrett, were there outlaw shows in Nashville proper during those years?
There were outlaw shows that came and went, and like in the suburbs or whatever. I mean, my God, did he wrestle on a show that his friends put on in a barn 3 times that there was never any newspaper ad? Yeah, but no, not with any recognized professional organization in Nashville was there a Midnight Angel, and I've never heard the other name. And you hear these stories all the time. Remember the fake Stan Lane? And I can't tell you how many people over 20 years I've had come into the house to work on the air conditioning and see some of my posters. Oh, yeah, I used to live across the street from the original Mass Spoiler. Because they just, these people tell other people that can't find out the difference that they were pro wrestlers. And they were always masked, which avoids them having to come up with that pesky fucking photograph of themselves actually wrestling. So I'm pretty sure that this is horseshit, but that's just me.
Do you feel like maybe you inspired this man, the Midnight Angel? Would that have been a good name for a masked babyface sidekick for the Midnight Express?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what other gimmick he was combining with the... Was his favorite job guy Tommy Angel? What was there a Midnight Devil that he was sent to Earth to fight and oppose? What? I don't get the gimmick.
What was Tommy Angel's real name?
Oh, good Lord!
It wasn't Tommy Reynolds.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, just double checking.
I used to know it at one point. Now I can't. Well, I don't know if he'd want me to say it on the air anyway.
Hey, where did Lee Scott come from?
He was one of the Northern Alabama guys, as I recall.
Because when he showed up, there was a brief period he was there. He took the most hellacious bumps anyone had taken on TBS ever.
Yes, that's why that we booked him on TV every chance we could, because he could take a bigger backdropper of fucking, a bigger anything. Especially with all the Road Warriors and the Samoans and all the guys, we had to boost him.
Where was the first time you saw that Chris Hamrick bump? The one that he did on Raw like twice, and both times the audience was blown away, where I don't even know how to explain. He goes for a drop kick of some sort, but he just
No. Hold on. He's hitting the ropes. And by the way, I saw it the first time he did it on Raw. I was like, what the fuck did you mean to do that? Oh, yeah. But as he's coming off the ropes, the babyface sidesteps him and leg sweeps him with the babyface's right leg to where it like he swept both of his feet out from under Chris, and Chris jumps up and goes feet first through the second and third rope straight to the floor without touching anything. And I was like, God damn it. He said, yeah, I can do it whenever I want to. I said, that's good. That's good. I like Chris Hamrick. He was a heck of a worker, but I didn't see a lot of people talked about that bump, but I didn't see the upside in it.
No, but you remember it. It stood out. And
yeah, but you generally remember the major car crash that leaves you in a goddamn wheelchair and an iron lung. Can you be in a wheelchair and an iron lung at the same time?
I don't know. You're the iron lung expert here.
Well, I'm wondering if they'd be able to just kind of put your upper body in the iron lung and then slide the chair in under your ass and have your legs kind of sticking up in the air.
Well, Jim, our next question sent on the Facebook.
Hey.
Jim, this next one was sent via Facebook, is what I was trying to say. The official Cult of Cornette Facebook group. This was sent in by Josh Tustison. Would Ken Shamrock or Dan Severn, in their primes, have been able to defeat Brock Lesnar in a real fight or shoot wrestling match?
Oh, geez. Well, the answer is yes. Because at that level, anybody can beat anybody if both fighters are in their prime era of age and athletic, competitiveness. So the short answer is yes, but I mean, when you get to that level, it's really how the fight goes and, which guy can make it about his style first, because Dan was not an exciting fighter because he was so based in wrestling and ground and pound and immobilize and fucking whatever. And, he wasn't the chiseled physique of Shamrock, who had not had the level of amateur career that Dan had, but had more explosiveness. But then you've got Brock, who, wasn't a Dan Gable as far as technique, but was a physical freak as far as power. And with training, he was really dangerous. But either one of those guys could have beat either one of the other two, depending on how it fucking went, because Severn and Shamrock both did. Does that answer the question?
So you're saying yes.
I'm saying yes, there's a chance.
There's a chance.
Yes, it at that level, in a shoot, and depending on what the rules are and what the what style is what, any of those guys could have beat any of those guys.
All right, very diplomatic, Jim Cornette, with that answer.
Well, no, I'm being realistic. Yes, I believe.
Do you think Shamrock's at the same level as a Lesnar or Severn? Again, these are high-quality wrestlers, and Shamrock did shoot fighting and early days of UFC.
But what are the rules? Is this strictly collegiate wrestling? Is it MMA? Is it some kind of weird hybrid? Is it brawl for all? What are the goddamn rules here? That's what, in a real fight, is what the question was, right?
Right.
So in a real fight, yes, depending on what the rules and the styles were and what happened early, any of the three of those guys could have beat the other ones.
Do you think Brock could be knocked out?
Yeah, anybody can be knocked out. How high is the building he has to fall off of? I'm not sure.
Well, Jim, go ahead.
I was just going to say, neither Severn nor Shamrock would have probably knocked him out or even tried, to knock him out. They would have tried to tap him out, and Brock has tapped out before.
Well, Jim, our next question, once again, from the Facebook group, The Official Cult of Cornette, sent in by Perry Cox. I'm not sure if this has been
You're just making these up now.
This is his name, Perry. It says Perry, do it to it, Cox.
Yeah, is he the brother of Dixon Cox?
I'm not sure if this has been covered before. I'm not sure how much we're going to have to bleep on YouTube. But I always wondered why the Midnight Express were not immediately put back in the World Tag title picture over teams like Rude and Fernandez and Ole and Arn Anderson. I know they were U.S. Tag Champs not long after losing the World Tag titles, but it just seems to me as a fan, they should have been the main challengers as the top heel tag team. Again, sorry if this has been asked before, but thank you.
Well, and honestly, the way that it turned out with Rude and Fernandez and how they, left and etc., we should have been. But I understand Dusty was trying to make a new heel team, and he always liked Manny Fernandez, and he saw something in Rick Rude, and they weren't the level of team that the Midnight Express were, but they had just teamed up. You couldn't expect them to be, but he wanted to make, as I said, a new heel team. And then they all fucking got mad and walked out. But also, in 1986, we were the World Tag Team Champions 8 months out of that year, and the time that we weren't, it was the Rock and Roll Express. So if we then lost the belts to the Rock and Roll and then were the immediate guys trying to challenge him right away, there's almost no difference. He wanted to change things up, and that's why he instituted the U.S. Tag Team title and had us win the tournament. And then he told us in these words, the U.S. tag belts are part of your ring outfit now, baby. They were almost always ours because he knew that as heels and with my promos, we could get heat out of just having belts. And because we were former world champions, we would make them more prestigious for the baby faces going for them. And we would drop them to somebody, the Fantastics, whatever, and then get them back because it was part of our ring wardrobe. But with Ole and Arn, they were part of the Horsemen, and then later on it became Tully and Arn. And no problem with Tully and Arn being the champions and the top heel team being pushed because they were excellent in their own way. But with Rude and Fernandez, yeah, for a while, before I really learned what the fuck in hindsight Dusty was probably trying to do, I was like, well, Jesus Christ. They went from us and the rock and roll to eh. But it was what it was.
Well, Jim, our next question sent via email to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com is from Jeff in upstate New York. Can you fellas think of some other wrestlers that were so fucking good that they carried two nicknames, much less simultaneously? Also, any and all thoughts or comments on the master of the superplex, the ace, Cowboy, Bob Orton. He doesn't say Bob Orton, just says the ace Cowboy, would truly be appreciated. So I guess that may be where he's coming from with wrestlers with two nicknames, the ace Cowboy.
Oh, ace Cowboy Bob.
But two nicknames, what do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I guess it's happened, and I'm blindsided by the question. So, Brian, can you think of any? Because I don't really know, and I don't know that I've ever cared. But, you know, a lot of heels, when they would do promos, they would talk themselves up as being this, that, or the other thing. But Cowboy Bob Orton had already been Cowboy Bob Orton for a long time, and then he became Ace because Roddy Piper started calling him Ace in the promos. And
Slick
that's
Rick.
kind of how that happened.
Slick Rick. I don't know if
Slick
you consider
Rick,
that.
the Nature Boy.
Yeah, I don't know if you consider that.
I don't. They weren't officially, you know, put in the newspaper advertisements or, you know, whatever. But
Dr. Big Bill Miller.
Well, there you go. But both were legitimate because he was a doctor of veterinary medicine, so he was a doctor, and he was 6'6" and 300 pounds, so he was big.
Do you like Big as a nickname? I mean, some guys rock it, like Big John Studd, but then there's also like, you know, Wayne Munn.
Well, there's also Big Bill.
Big Bill. Well, that doesn't count. That's new.
Well, and see, here's the thing. Big John Studd had a payoff, right? Big Bill has no payoff. He's big and he's John, but he's a stud. Whereas he's big and he's Bill.
Even like Big Bad John. He was big and bad.
Because it was another qualifier.
Yeah.
Big Bad John. You don't need a last name with a name like that. Everybody knows you're big and you're bad and you're John. You don't need to be Big Bad John Hinklemeyer. See, that would be too much, and then you'd crowd yourself off the marquee. And they'd just go with John Pismo or whoever was shorter.
Any other wrestlers with two nicknames you could think of? Oh, well, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors.
Well, but now is that nicknames? That's not really nickname. The Road Warriors was a team. Now, the Midnight Express wasn't really a nickname. It was a team name.
But they can't. Well, that's true. I was going to say they
Beautiful Bobby and Sweet Stan. They would have been Beautiful, Luscious Bobby and Sweet, Gorgeous Stan.
Well, the Sultan of Swing, Sweet Stan Lane. You called him that enough, right?
No. He was the Gangster of Love. Bobby was the Sultan of Swing.
Ah, shit.
Yeah, see? So the point is, this is a drivel question. But Bob Orton Jr. was one of the great workers of the fucking modern era. No doubt about that.
And this makes me think of my favorite ring introduction for whatever reason. From the land of the rising sun, the Pearl of the Orient, the Great Muda.
And that's Gary Hart terminology. He loved terminology like the Pearl of the Orient, brother.
Well, I think that was actually the start of it. Gary Hart presents.
Yes. Because he also liked to present people.
Yeah, like he was Bill Graham, the concert promoter.
Gorgeous George Jr. did that also in Knoxville with the Mongolian Stomper. Instead of managed by Gorgeous George, it was Gorgeous George Jr. presents the Mongolian Stomper.
All right. Well, I have sent you something that came into the drive-through email because it was.
You have?
Because it was kind of long, so I thought I would send it to you. But it follows up on a previous conversation we have had on the show about syndicated wrestling television, and a name that we didn't mention in that conversation. Johnny Doyle.
I'm looking at it right now. That email. The clipping from the Los Angeles Times of November 30th, 1950.
Because we were talking about audience size. Like, how big could Hollywood wrestling have been? How many towns was it going in? How many stations was it on? What was the audience size?
And this was across the country, is what we were talking about when these tapes were being syndicated to different stations around the country. But as I'm looking at this, Johnny Doyle was claiming that when wrestling bouts were being televised, 750,000 per show at the Long Beach Arena and 700,000 at Ocean Park. In addition, these two shows are recorded and retelecast over 26 stations in the United States to more than 10 million persons. So he's saying the local Los Angeles airings were 750 and 700,000. And I think we can believe that with the population of Los Angeles, even in 1950, and the fact there were, 3 television stations maybe, if you were watching TV.
And again, going to the note, this was sent in by one of the listeners, Adam Smith, East Yorkshire, England. Let me see what he says here. I'm currently researching that period in Southern California and found the below clipping from the LA Times, 30th of November, 1950. While there's no way to validate the viewing numbers Doyle puts forth, the station numbers are likely accurate. It's also noteworthy that this is after the first wrestler walkout at the Hollywood Legion in February 1950 that caused Doyle to cut down on the amount of weekly television shows to just 2.
Yeah, remember that when TV first hit, the promotion was starting to get deals with TV stations to air the shows in Long Beach and the shows in Ocean Park. And the wrestlers weren't getting paid for that, but because it was on television, it was hurting the live attendance. And that's how
the Olympic.
Yeah, the Olympic too. And that's how the wrestlers did get paid, on the gates. So what the fuck? They walked out and they not only pressured for money for TV, but also for less television because it was hurting the live event gates. But at the same time, the arena promoters and the athletic commissions, as Adam mentions, were saying, no, put more on TV. But, the wrestlers are like, fuck you, we're getting screwed. And that started that whole brouhaha.
It is interesting. At some point, that was the first time that conversation happened. I'm not saying here, but at some point, late 40s, more than likely early 50s. Hey, we're not getting paid extra in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Texas, wherever it may be. You couldn't really sell it then like these are being used to promote the local matches.
Yeah.
Because that really wasn't what wrestling TV was then.
Well, they had never at that point sold guys on being on TV to promote the local matches because, as you said, they weren't actually doing that yet. They had just started that when this started. So the promoters just started getting on TV and not paying the boys any extra. Sort of like 40 years later, Vince just starts selling home video and not paying the boys any extra because nobody had ever fucking thought of it before because they didn't do it.
There's a name that needs a good book or someone needs to write something good about him. Johnny Doyle, a major shaker in wrestling and in the middle of a lot of things.
Yeah, and always friendly with Barnett and whoever the major promoters were in the business for years and years.
But he was Barnett's guy until he died.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was the questions. We're going to get more questions on a drive-thru. And of course, if you have questions, you could submit them via email, cornydrivethru@gmail.com. If you're a member of the Facebook group, we will have a new post up soon. And on Twitter, #CornyDriveThru.
And I have a question for you, Brian Last.
It's a mystery. What's going on? You okay?
I have a question for you, Brian Last. I thought you would say, well, what is that, Jim Cornette?
See, you thought you knew what I was going to do. I threw a curveball.
See, as Mama Cornette used to say, he thought he farted, but he shit. But my question to you is, what in the world is going on at the Arcadian Vanguard Network this week?
Oh, shit. Another fine week of programming on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information on all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Want to make note, this week on Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, he has the son of killer Carl Cox. Here's some great stories there. Upcoming episode coming up with the son of Harley Race. So stay tuned for that. And we'll see who else has offspring that are willing to speak in future weeks on Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, SUAWpod.com, or look for Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon wherever you find your favorite podcast. Will you stop? You're getting me going. Of course, we're being serious now, folks, because to get the serious wrestling news each and every day, you can get it from The Wrestling News. TheWrestlingNews.com, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. No clickbait, no paywall, just the wrestling news. No opinion, no star ratings, just the news, the wrestling news. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership! Go through the archive, 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Parts 2 and 3 of Scott Cornish on the way. The Scott Cornish tribute, I should say, on the way.
No,
the Mothership.
Parts of Scott Cornish
Stop.
are on the way.
The Mothership.
And we're going to find out who else has offspring that want to talk.
Well, we somehow have to transition from here to something else, but there's so much laughter going on, we will just stop right now, curtly.
Wait a minute, Brian. I've got a breaking update here. News coming across the ticker.
A breaking update?
On the entertainment desk here. Remember we were talking about when I went to summer camp, they herded us into a room and they showed us a black and white movie on a fucking screen they pulled down when we were holding a bottle of RC Cola and a moon pie. That was the entertainment, right? I couldn't remember the name of the movie. I thought it was Grandma So-and-so Meets the Vampire. It was not Old Mother Riley Meets the Vampire, starring Bela Lugosi and Arthur Lucan, who played Old Mother Riley, because it was a man dressed up as a woman. I can't remember all the particulars. Old Mother Riley Meets the Vampire. That was the movie.
Who sent this in? How did you find out?
I got it on Twitter just now. I retweeted it. They included the poster for Old Mother Riley Meets the Vampire. It was a comedy horror flick done in Bela Lugosi's morphine days.
As in his entire career.
Oh, come on now.
I was hooked on junk his entire career.
He was, well, at first he was just undead, and then he had to have prescriptions to cure that. But anyway, so that's what that was there. A fine flick.
What'd you think of Ed Wood? What'd you think of Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi?
I thought it was good. I liked, I've told you this before, George Steele was a great Tor Johnson, but they even contacted me in Knoxville to send them pictures of the Mongolian Stomper when they were trying to cast the Tor. But George Steele looked more like Tor Johnson because Archie was, even though he was almost 60, he was fucking etched. He was goddamn cut, sculptured, if you will.
And that's what you thought of Ed Wood. Okay.
No, it was a good movie. Good movie. Very fine movie. No Old Mother Riley Meets the Vampire, but it was good.
And Martin Landau's performance?
As Bela Lugosi, and he went all the way to actually use the real heroin, too. That was incredible.
All right, it's that kind of show today, folks. All right, it's your show.
Well, it's my show, but you had some things to ask me about, Brian, as you told me earlier today before we went on the air.
Well, we have a few things here that we haven't been able to do on the drive-thru, so we're going to conquer your show, take it over.
Why is the drive-thru always so jammed and we got nothing going on over here these days?
We're having the yips movement. Everyone's coming, and we're taking over your show and making it for the people here today. Lots of desk drumming and all sorts of chaos. But, Jim, we're going to have some guests to program. Before we get there, let's talk about some recent retro action figures or retro wrestling figures.
What are you?
There's really no action. I mean, you really can't say action, I don't think. I think you just say these are retro figures because
you can make them have action if you move them, but they're not self-animated. They're not.
There's no spring action.
Beings.
There's no spring action.
No kung fu grip.
Well, they have a grip. This PN News figure here I have in my hand has a grip on it.
Oh, he's got a
gold microphone.
I was going to say he had an Egg Foo Young grip instead of a kung fu grip. He was a.
And by the way, we'll talk about this real quick because PN News is the latest figure that was put out by KWK. Let me grab one of these over here. These
yes, you're so loud.
The official KWK Kayfabe Heroes Wrestling line, PN News. There's two variants, one in his traditional baby blue, and of course one in his famed orange getup with the word yo right on front.
Yo!
But we have a few extra of these that were thankfully sent over.
Now think about this. This was 1991. The kids had been rapping for a while at that point. Yeah. And the brain trust that was Jim Hurd and the rest of the echelon at TBS thought that this guy was a cutting-edge rapper because he said yo.
Well, he actually said yo, baby, yo. And it always made me laugh because that was the thing that Eddie Murphy made the guy say it like gunpoint in Beverly Hills Cop 2. It's like, do you like rap music? Say yo, baby, yo. It's the same thing. Almost not at gunpoint. Unless you looked at the ratings, not at gunpoint. But that's what PN News was saying to the audience.
They tried everything else but gunpoint. That's, I think people would have just said, go ahead and shoot.
Well, like I said, we have a couple of these rare figures because it was not a large run. So these are all collector's items. We have a couple extras that were sent over to us by KWK Shawning. We're going to have a contest on the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. Best rap. Write a rap, and we'll judge it. The experts in rap, Jim Cornette.
Now, wait a minute. You're saying that they have to write a rap, and then we got to read it, and we got to judge it. So if you've read the raps they've written, you'll know they're really well-written raps.
Yeah, it has to be something about the show or about something we talk about. It can't just be, hey, here's a rap I wrote years ago. I've been waiting for my chance. And also, be conscious that we're not going to be able to read it or listen to it if it's just filled with filth. So if it's something
unlike this program,
if it is something in rhyme that the Von Erichs would reject in 1983, don't send it in. But otherwise, the Cult of Cornette Facebook group will have more about that. Jim, I have here, move over here.
You're over there now.
The latest from the official Grapplers and Gimmicks line by Hastel Toys.
Now, is this Lynn Denton's firm?
No, that would be just Grappler, no Grapplers and Gimmicks.
Oh, okay. So he started Grappler and Gimmicks, and now they're trading on Grapplers and Gimmicks, trying to avoid some kind of copyright infringement.
Hold on this topic. Should they have stayed the Grapplers, or do you think becoming the Dirty White Boys was the right move?
I think at the time the Dirty White Boys was a better move because honestly, Lynn was great with the Grappler gimmick, but it was pushed and it was established in Portland. When they came to Tennessee as the Grapplers, there had been so many masked guys and so many masked jobbers, and just so much of the mask thing had been prostituted that I think when you could see their faces, and especially it gave Tony a gimmick for years after that, but when you could see their faces and, because they were both excellent workers, it was better for that particular place and time.
Well, the tag team featured here from Hastel Toys, no name, a lost opportunity to say not the Mounties, the Pierre Carl Ouellette and Jacques Rougeau.
Pierre Carl Ouellette, you see, you don't have good French accents there, Brian.
Oh, you do?
Well, yes.
Oh, you do? Oh, you do?
Oh, you do? Oui, oui, monsieur.
Oh,
I do. Oh.
A petit
in a soupçon.
All right.
And the soup's on in the soup, and then you have the cooking.
First of all, we apologize to all of our French and French-Canadian fans. Second of all...
No, I'm not apologizing to any French Canadians. They never apologize to anybody else.
Once again, I have here, they were known as the Quebecers in the WWE in 1993, which was known as the WWF, actually, in 1993. What do you think the finishing maneuver listed here for Pierre Carl Ouellet? What do you think the finishing maneuver is?
Oh, good Lord. I'm trying to... Because it's almost never what they actually used.
Almost never. Yeah, they've caught us a few times.
They caught us a couple times, but secondly, I'm trying to remember what they were using. Was it the Alouette, Gentil Alouette? I don't know.
The Canadian Crunch.
Okay, I don't remember the Canadian Crunch being, unless that's a soft drink.
What was Jacques' finishing maneuver? Or what is the figure's finishing maneuver for Jacques, I guess I should say.
Jacques' finishing maneuver was getting so much heat that they finished him up.
That's right, Jacques Jolt. Jacques Jolt.
Jacques Jolt.
Is that why they finished him up in 94?
Which year? I can't remember what he went through a time or two. No, Jacques was a fine talent, but he had ways of getting heat on himself because of the French-Canadian air that he exhibited.
And by the way, the back of this figure promises coming soon. A couple of interesting figures. We have Downtown Bruno.
All right.
Who's dressed like Brian Hildebrand for some reason. And here's a big one. James W. Ware. James W. Ware with his faithful bird, who I guess...
No, wait a minute. How in the world can he not be Coco? He was Coco Ware in his first wrestling match in 1978. That was 7 years before he went to the WWF. How could he not be Coco Ware now?
Well, somewhere along the way, he sold the rights to Coco to someone, but I don't know how that would work.
He sold his soul to Coco?
That's not exactly what I said, and it sounds so ridiculous because it is, but there it is, the upcoming figures, but this is the recent release. Grapplers and Gimmicks, Hastel Toys, not the Mounties, not the Quebecers, but almost.
Not Coco.
Jim, I have here...
I wonder, could he just be Co?
Co-ware?
Co-ware.
Well, I have here... From Zombie Sailor's official Wrestling Heels and Faces toy line, President Jack Tunney.
Oh my God.
Although it doesn't say president, it just says Jack Tunney. I don't know if they're allowed to list the official office title that he had for the bullshit position, but he wasn't really the president, but he was someone who made as much money on the WWF expansion almost as much as any wrestler in some ways, right?
What are you talking about? Almost as much as any wrestler. Jack Tunney, I guarantee you, made more money at that period of time in his affiliation with the WWF than any of the boys did. Maybe Hogan. Because not only was the Tunney family really the operators and manipulators of Ontario wrestling and that part of Canada wrestling for years and years, even predating Vince McMahon Jr. But Canada was always an important market for the WWF during the time of Vince's expansion. And goddamn, who was it just cut the promo on one of the programs saying even when business was down, Canada was always there. And it was true. And Jack Tunney, as owner of the promotion and the ruling family there, out of Toronto with those stadium shows they did and the Sky Dome and the blah, 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 I would think he made more money at that period of time than any of the boys. As I said, maybe except for Hogan, because the promoters of markets like that were always making more money than the fucking boys.
So I have this figure here, and again, it's cool for someone like me or other nerds who are trying to complete their collection of every living person that was involved with wrestling in the toy years. But Jack Tunney as president on screen, was there a least charismatic man to ever be president of a wrestling company? And what are your thoughts? What should that role be? What kind of personality do you think should be in that kind of role?
Well, remember when they had Bob Geigel on television as the president of the NWA? Because he was the president of the NWA, and he had flip-flops and shorts on and a Hawaiian shirt and a bald head. Fucking hell. And that was the way he really dressed, but we didn't need to know that. Jack Tunney, you didn't need charisma at that point to be the president of the WWF or be the figurehead president of a wrestling promotion. You were supposed to be an older guy that looked good in a suit and was saying legitimate shit and not sounding like a gimmick, so that the gimmicks, the talent, and their antics and behavior would stand out. And then, you know, there's always been the commissioner or the special promotional executive or the, you know, representative of the promotion that was really in the office some kind of way, was one of the boys or had retired from being one of the boys. And I think those types are easier to draw money with because you can get them in the ring, or they can do angles, or they can cut promos. With Jack Tunney, obviously, you couldn't do any of that because he couldn't do any of that. But he was a really stately looking gray-haired gentleman who you could believe was the president of a fucking, you know, some type of sports organization. So it's pick your poison. I always like the Gorilla Monsoon type, or the, you know, the Bill Watts type, or the Bob Armstrong type, or the type that you could get in the ring and do shit with, or he could be involved physically.
When I was a kid, it blew my mind with my father, who wasn't a wrestling fan, but he kind of knew who the major players were, when he told me that Vince McMahon owned WWF, not Jack Tunney. Again, I was a kid. I didn't realize, you know, you could be the president and not own the company. But the idea that there was the commentator who Jesse Ventura yelled at and not Jack Tunney, that blew my mind.
So that's what happened to it.
It was Vince McMahon and Jack Tunney's fault. How many people have said that?
So you've been blown by Vince McMahon and Jack Tunney.
I did not say that. Again, this whole episode has just been an incredible insight into clearly a filthy, filthy mind.
Filthy, filthy, filthy.
Jim, I have another figure here. This one, once again, from the Hastel Toys Grapplers and Gimmicks toy line. The new Mark Merrow action figure.
Does it come with Sable's suitcase?
It comes with 3 variants. There is a...
No, he wasn't even good enough for one variant. He was straight down the middle. That's what you got.
Well, no, this one has red on white trunks, or red and white trunks. This other one has black and yellow, and of course, black and silver or gray here. Mark Merrow, what do you think his finishing maneuver is?
Oh, boy. Divorce papers?
The Wild Womp.
The Wild Womp. Okay, well, he wasn't the wild thing. Was he the wild one? Wild man.
Wild man.
Wild man.
He was a wild man.
That's another one. I told you the story when Bruce was all excited about signing Mark Henry. He can dunk a basketball. He was over the moon about Mark Merrow because Vince was over the moon about Mark Merrow, because Vince McMahon was over the moon about Johnny B. Bad, which is what he was thought he was getting when he got Mark Merrow. And then you should have heard Bruce trying to sell me Sable. Oh, and his wife's beautiful and she's coming with him. I say he's going to be a babyface? Oh, yeah. Well, why does he need the woman? Well, because she's his wife and she's beautiful. Well, then everybody will be staring at her and not paying any attention to him. And why does a babyface need a girl in his corner? Isn't that rather presumptuous and obnoxious of him? He's this big ladies' man. Oh, no, they're a married couple. Even worse. Then the women won't like him because he's married, and the men won't like him because he's married this fucking hot chick. Bruce and I couldn't get along on these gimmicks, as you can tell. By the way, everything I said would happen came to pass, but nevertheless.
You know, it's crazy. His name is Mark Merrow, M-E-R-O. And there's so many similarities between him and Miro, M-I-R-O. Maybe they could be a team. Miro.
Either that, well, no, Mark Miro, he's older now. He could be Miro's manager, accompanied by Miro.
Well, we have here, Jim, one more figure here today. And actually, there's two of these. Let me grab this. I'm very happy to say 2 of these are on the way to you right now in the mail.
Well, bless your little pea-picking heart.
This is the latest from Mattel's WWE Legends toy line. The brand new Big Bubba Rogers action figure. There are 2 variants. There is one with a white shirt, black suspenders, brown hat, and there is one with a blue shirt, black suspenders, and a black hat. Both come with sunglasses. The UWF Heavyweight Championship and I guess what you would say, return to WCW Bubba Rogers late 90s head as well, if you want to switch the head out. So let me read the description to you, Jim.
Wait a minute, he had the same fucking head.
Well, no, but the hair, the head on the figure here.
The head on the hair, it
has a beard, it has a mustache, it has longer hair. The Big Boss Man, it's a goatee, more of a crew cut kind of look. And that's what he returned as. But anyway, the description, Big Bubba Rogers was a force to be reckoned with in the 80s, the 1980s to be exact. The agile big man began his career as a bodyguard for Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express before taking on legends like Dustin Rhodes, One Man Gang, and Michael Hayes. Later, I never think of Big Bubba Rogers versus Michael Hayes ever.
Not exactly a Briscoe and Funk rivalry, but...
Later, Rogers traveled to WWE where he dished out hard time as Big Boss Man. So we finally everyone has their Midnight Express action figures and, of course, Cornette collectibles at JimCornette.com.
Well, thank you. You actually anticipated. I was going to say, if you need more classic wrestling figures, the Midnight Express and Heavenly Bodies tag team set available at JimCornette.com. But go ahead.
But now there is a Big Bubba to protect the Jim Cornette action figure.
To serve and protect.
What are your thoughts on the fact that there is this, they call him a chase, the shirt variant? The blue shirt, which is the harder one to get. Again, not dark blue, but like a, blue shirt.
Well, like the blue boss man, like the Big Boss Man
like
had
the
blue
boss man, yes.
Yes, or the blue ball man. I don't know. What I'm trying to say to you is the boss man had the blue shirt because it was more of a police officer type of apparatus, whereas Big Bubba had a white shirt.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you because, it's funny. When I saw this, I started thinking to myself, did he ever wear that as Big Bubba? Again, it's not as dark blue. Not that it was dark blue. It's the Big Boss Man's uniform. But it's a dress shirt.
Yes.
Bluish.
Well, because they can't do an actual police or guards uniform, or that would be the infringement upon the trademark of the Big Boss Man.
I don't know if that's... well, we'll see what you think.
Big Bubba Rogers wore white shirts. He didn't wear a blue shirt.
Well,
but now we're not to be bogged down in minutia. I'm glad to see that Big Bubba got a figure and that's why I thought it was so crazy when he left the WWF and they brought him back in WCW that they didn't immediately and permanently make him Big Bubba Rogers. And that they tried to do the Guardian Angel and the Boss.
Yeah.
All these stupid trying to get around the copyright. Big Bubba had been a big deal 5 years previously in the same company. And it was him as much as and I understand why Vince changed Big Bubba to the Boss Man, because he wants to own the gimmicks and blah, blah, blah. And it was more of a WWF gimmick. But it was still Bubba because he was a prison guard at Cobb County in Marietta. And he had that in him. And the Big Bubba thing was what he had created himself and made based on the parameters that Dusty and I gave him as far as just a wrestling bodyguard and the things he needed to pick up on pretty quick. But that other stuff was just foolishness. And it wasn't gimmicks that looked good on him. And it wasn't stuff that he could sink his teeth into. And it was just trying to remind people in a vague way about who he had been before when he was at a big company, Pinocchio. So I hated all that other shit. He was too good for that.
What are your thoughts on the figure coming with the UWF Championship?
Well, that is think about this, Bubba. I don't even know if Dusty ever put him in a match for a title when he was our bodyguard and working the Crockett end of the territory. When they bought UWF, Dusty had so much faith in him and wanted to create or get him to the next level, even above that, and create another single heel star and put the belt on him. But that's the only singles belt he ever had or even challenged for before he went to the WWF.
I love that match too. Him against the One Man Gang on UWF TV for the title, because they're both heels. One Man Gang had been there for a while with Akbar. Bubba had never been there, ever. And the fans that were still left at that point reacted to it the same way I did at home. It was such a big deal. These two guys could both move.
Yeah.
What were they both, 6'6" or 6'7"?
Gang was one of those guys with deceptively big. I don't know if he was taller than 6'4" or 6'5", but because of his weight and just the space he took up, Bubba was probably about 6'6", 6'7", maybe. And he weighed a little bit more, but they were both very similar in when they first started in the business, because Gang started with the Poffos and ICW. And when I was watching those TVs, I was like, my God, here's this fucking guy at this size that nobody's ever heard of before, has never wrestled anywhere else, and he's taken these over-the-top rope bumps and, over the top of the post and all this other stuff. And then when Bubba came along, like 5-6 years later than Gang, he was taking unique and different style bumps, and he had a different style of offense because he had really, again, had on-the-job training and had figured this out as he was going along. But he figured out some different shit that worked for him, and he picked it up quick, and it was totally unique for a style for a big guy at that time. But I can't wait to see the figure, even with all the different heads.
Figures, different heads, different shirts. You'll be getting them in the mail, and of course, those are retro figures. Thank you to everyone for making cool figures. But on the topic of cool figures, and of course anyone who gets this big Bubba Rogers figure, you need Midnight Express action figures. Let's talk about Cornette's collectibles.
Well, indeed we should. We should mention JimCornette.com, the fine quality merchandise with the low prices, including, as I mentioned, the Midnight Express Eaton and Lane and Eaton and Condrey sets. The heavily body sets remain dwindling. They are going fast. And, of course, all the other fine merchandise, including my T-shirts, books, DVDs, Cult of Cornette membership certificates, periodicals, personal grooming items, snacks, peanut butter crackers. You get all kinds of stuff at JimCornette.com.
I'm not going to stop you and protect you the same way I try to do our friendly sponsors.
Well, that's because we're not friendly. We don't need to be, because we do the business. At JimCornette.com, we don't need to be friendly because we sell shit dirt cheap. And that's what you want to pay for it, is dirt.
All right. Well, Jim, would you like to do some guest the program before we wrap things up?
I've been waiting for this. I'm going to kick your ass today. If we haven't prepped the folks, guess the program, the recurring segment, one of our most popular, where you pick a program, give me the lineup, and it is my job to try to determine the year that this happened and the place that this happened. Now you're making all kinds of noises over there. You're flicking and you're flipping and you're swallowing and...
I'm not swallowing. Hold on.
Sounded like glug, glug, glug.
All right. Well, let's go to this, Jim. We have a whole bunch of here. It's been a long time since we've gone through them, so the pile has grown. This is a gimme. We'll start with a nice, easy one for you.
Okay.
I know how old you are. Rocky Smith versus Tony Belageron.
Belergian.
Exactly. In a tag team match, Eddie Graham and Sam Steamboat versus Gene Dundee and Tamiya Soto.
Tamayo.
They left out a letter here in this program. Sailor Art Thomas in a handicap match against Tojo Yamamoto and Bob Arnold. An intermission where lucky numbers in the program will be announced. And the main event, Lester Welch and Buddy Fuller versus the Von Bronner brothers.
Alrighty then. Rocky Smith would later on go on to become one of the Masked Infernos, one of the several that used that gimmick. Tony Belersian was a sibling of the Belersian brothers that were big, especially in the Northeast and in the 50s. They were all strong men, were they not? Did feats of strength and daring do?
And daring do, yes.
Daring do, as opposed to the people who daring don't, because they don't want to be daring. Tamayo Soto, and did you say Gene Dundee?
That is indeed who I said, yes.
Obviously not Bill Dundee. Didn't Gene Dundee become, goddamn, was he a brother of the Monroes, Sputnik Monroe at one time, or am I thinking he became another brother of someone? Nevertheless, Eddie Graham and Sam Steamboat were the perennial tag team babyface champions and or singles champions in the Florida territory. And at this period of time, which was in the mid-1960s, they were also doing quite a bit of work in Memphis, Tennessee. Art Thomas versus Tojo Yamamoto and Bob Arnold. I believe Bob Arnold was a heel referee gimmick that they were doing at that period of time. And Tojo was a heel. Art Thomas was a babyface. He didn't work the Memphis territory often, but they brought Art Thomas, Bobo Brazil, and different people in because of the heavy African-American population. And finally, I assume that Lester Welch and Buddy Fuller are fighting the Von Bronners for the World Tag Team title. Would that be the case?
There is no title listed.
No title listed. But you know, they did that many times. It's got to be Memphis, Tennessee. The question I have in my mind is whether it's 1965, 1966, or 1967. So I'm going to split the difference and go with 66.
The venue, or the city at least, Memphis, Tennessee, sponsored by the American Legion Post No. 1. Monday night, September 20th, 1965.
Son of a bitch. All right. Well, I was a few months off.
All right. We have another one here, Jim. This one may be a little closer to home. Let's see if you can get this one. The opening bout.
You sound like you're one of the psychics in the supper club shows, and their stooge sends them verbal cues. This one may be closer to home.
The opening bout. Bobby Fulton filling in for Skip Young versus El Diablo out of Mexico. The second event. Noted dirtbag and pervert Buck Rock and Roll Zumhoff.
Good Lord.
Hawaii versus the Missing Link from 3 question marks. The third event, a Texas death match. Kerry, special referee. That's what it says. Just Kerry, not Kerry Von Erich. Kerry. There was a famous match, I used to joke about it with Scott Cornish, where Mark Lawrence announced the winner of the match, Kevin. It doesn't really work, but Texas Deathmatch, Kerry, special referee, falls don't count. 30-second rest period after fall. If someone can't answer, a 10 count after rest. End of match. Terry Gordy from Atlanta versus Killer Khan from Mongolia. The fourth event, a special challenge bout. Mike Von Erich versus Gino Hernandez. The fifth bout, Kerry Von Erich and the Iceman, King Parsons, versus Jake the Snake Roberts and Kelly Kaniski. The sixth event, the Battle of Women.
The Battle of Women.
Battle of Women. Sunshine in corner, Stella Mae French from Florida versus Andrea the Lady Giant, Nicola Roberts, Lubbock. The seventh event, the American Tag Team titles. The champs, the Fantastics, Tommy Rogers, Bobby Fulton, it says Tommy Roberts. Tommy Roberts and Bobby Fulton from the City of Angels, Chillicothe, Ohio, versus the PYTs, Norvell Austin and Coco Ware, Memphis. The eighth event,
Jesus Christ,
a special revenge challenge match. Chick Donovan, Santa Monica, versus General
Santa Monica
versus General Akbar, Egypt. And
well, he's closer to being from Egypt than Chick is from Santa Monica.
Now, that was a special revenge challenge. The main event, an ultimate revenge match. Kevin Von Erich versus Chris Adams.
Okay, I narrowed it down with the Fantastics and the PYTs. I'm going to lean toward 1984. Because, I mean, this is obviously world class. From the number of matches, it's almost got to be a Star Wars event of some kind, whether Tarrant County Convention Center or Reunion Arena. At first, I was leaning toward 1983 because some of the names on there, but some of those guys were, there for several years, with the Fantastics being on the card and the PYTs especially. Norvell and Coco started that gimmick in Memphis, and then they came down and did some shots in Louisiana when the Rock and Roll had gone back to Tennessee, working with us as babyfaces in 1984. And the Fantastics got there around about that time. So all things considered, I'm saying this is a major world-class event at a big building in sometime between summer and winter of 1984.
Jim, this is the second annual Turkey Day Spectacular at Reunion Arena, November 22nd, 1984.
There you go.
So just a couple of months before you would arrive.
And then they wouldn't need 8 or 10 matches anymore. They had us.
You upset you didn't get to see the Battle of Women?
No, I've told you this. Stella Mae was my dry cleaner.
Yeah, you said that. Was that during this period? That was like in 85?
It was like 3 months later. Well, I moved there in January of 85, and I get the apartment, and I go down to the dry cleaners, and she said, "Oh, I know you." I said, "Oh, and what was her name? She used to work for Moolah years ago. It was
She always reminded me of that woman in Bad News Bears who worked at the Little League. Like, she was always around the Little League game. I don't know exactly what her role was. That's what she always reminded me of.
But she had been a woman wrestler in the old days and then moved to Dallas and ran into somebody, and they said, "Hey, this would be a great fucking deal." But yeah, she was working the counter at the dry cleaners.
All right, we have another one here, Jim. This one, the first event, 1 fall, 20-minute time limit. Bronco Lubitsch.
Oh, boy.
Versus Jack Allen, 229 out of Milwaukee. A special event, 1 fall, 30-minute time limit. Ilio de Paulo, spelled E-L-I-O, versus Earl McCready.
Jesus Christ.
Joe Tiger Tommaso versus Tex McKenzie. The semi windup, 1 fall, 45-minute time limit. Tiny Mills versus Sugi Hayamaka. And the main event, 1 fall, 1 hour time limit. Al Mr. Murder Mills versus Ken Kenneth.
Wow. Okay. Bronco Lubitsch was most famous in his world-class days as the older referee on world-class TV, but Bronco had been a manager and before that a wrestler. It was a great guy, saved his money. Boys, you say he was worth more than the federal government. Jack Allen, who the fuck knows? Elio DiPaolo was the favorite son of Buffalo, New York, and through the Northeast there in the Pedro Martinez promotion, Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester was a huge babyface. Earl McCready was started wrestling in what, the 30s? He was an old timer. Tiger Joe Tommaso later on became one of the assassins in the 60s with Guy Mitchell, right? They were Bruiser's assassins. Tex McKenzie, we've talked about many times. If they were already billing him as Tex McKenzie and not Hugh McKenzie or some of the other names that he used as a rookie, this would have to be 1959, 60, 61, thereabouts. Tiny and Al Mills were the tag team of Murder Incorporated. And they were both very large men. And as far as I know, Tsuji Hayamaka had to be some Japanese gimmick they gave somebody else because I've never heard that name before. And Ken Kenneth, I'm struggling as well. So I have reason to believe that this is upstate New York or those environs of the country in 1959.
The location? Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Son of a bitch!
The date? October 15th, 1954.
54? Holy shit. Okay, Bronco Lubitsch, I didn't know he was ever underage.
Young Stars Open Program. There will be 2 newcomers on Friday night's wrestling program at Victoria Pavilion. In addition to Tex McKenzie, the lanky Texas cowhand, who meets Tiger Tommaso, Montreal will send young Bronco Lubitsch into the ring against Jack Allen of Milwaukee. Lubitsch...
Montreal, by the way. Bronco's like fucking Czechoslovakian or Lithuanian or something, isn't he?
And by the way, it's spelled Lubitsch. Lubitch.
Oh my God.
Lubitsch, at 220 pounds, is rated as an up-and-coming youngster, the same as Allen, who made his first appearance last week. They meet for one fall in 20 minutes, and although the bout is a curtain raiser at 8:30 p.m., it is an important one, for the 2 young hopefuls will have their sights set on better spots in the future. So while Tex McKenzie and Bronco started out around the same time and were working the territory together.
All right, but I completely fucked that up. I was the wrong side of the fucking continent and 5 years off.
All right, here's another one. This one may be, I got 2 from this venue. I gotta pick one. I'll pick this one. All right. Torrid All-Star Thrillerama, bouts. The opening bout, one fall, 20 minutes. Pancho Pico.
Oh, good Lord.
Versus Gypsy Biviano. One fall, 20 minutes. Rick Valenzuela versus Mr. Yamamoto. One fall, 20 minutes. Akio Yashihara.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Versus Carlos Cruz. Chuck Carbo versus Ray Gordon. 2 out of 3 falls. 45-minute time limit. Don Arnold versus Ray Valdez. And the main event, 2 out of 3 falls, 1 hour tag team match. The Dupree brothers and manager Major Sam Bass versus Don Bulldog Kent and Louis Martinez.
Okay, so we are in the Arizona territory.
Why would you say that? What would cause you to say that?
I said, well, because I briefly remember seeing the name Pancho Pico. I don't have any idea who Gypsy Zabadai is, or Valenzuela, or Mr. Yamamoto. I don't think that was Tojo, or Carlos Cruz, or whatever. But when you got to Chuck Carbo was one of the longtime baby faces in the old-time Phoenix territory. Was Ray Gordon Guillotine Gordon at one point?
You may be right, but there was no picture, obviously, here. Actually, Ray Gordon judged the Hercules of the wrestling world in a July issue of Red Hot Magazine Wrestling Review. See photos and big-time ranking.
Well, Don Arnold was also an Arizona name.
It's just a little corner with a little photo of his face, and it says Pancho Pico is one of the most exciting wrestlers in the U.S.
And if you don't think so, you're punchy. But the Dupree brothers against Don Kent and Luis Martinez, Ron Dupree and Chris Colt, as they would be more widely known. The manager, Sam Bass, is that the Tennessee Sam Bass, Fred White? Before his Tennessee run, because he did outlaw shit before Lawler ran into him in Alabama and Mississippi in 1971.
Was he ever called Major Sam Bass?
Not that I'm aware of. But I have to say this is the Phoenix territory, and this would be what, 1968, 69, somewhere in that area.
The venue, Madison Square Garden, Phoenix, Arizona, Friday, June 16th, 1967.
Boom!
And also,
well, there you go.
There's a big $25 cash win-win-win contest tonight. Winning ticket must match color. Official program of the wrestling matches. Then it says, this is bizarre, you buy a program, not a chance. What the fuck is that?
No, I'll tell you exactly what that is. Because depending on state and local laws, raffles or games of chance or whatever are illegal. So you are buying the program. You are not paying money for the chance at winning something.
Oh, wow.
That's secondary and complementary to the thing.
Please notice, state laws prohibit the throwing of things into the ring. Your cooperation is solicited. It is also against the law for you to strike a wrestler. Profanity is forbidden. Sounds like a real party over there in Phoenix.
Well, I'm telling you, no, they had to fucking specifically mention those things because the small time territories were tougher on the heels than the big territories.
All right, I have a program here, but the story is really the story on the cover. We'll get to this. The first event, Bobby Christie versus Gentleman Ed Sharp. Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1 fall, 15 minutes.
Okay.
Also 1 fall, 15 minutes for the second event. Tommy Phelps, Dallas, Texas, versus Blackie Mendoza, Juarez, Mexico. The third event, 6-man tag team match. Nick Roberts, Tampa, Florida, Joe Hamilton, St. Louis, Missouri, and Bobby Christie, Woodland Hills, California, versus Dr. X O'Toole, Phoenix, Arizona.
That's the Irish masked fucking assassin, Dr. X O'Toole.
We'll see what more we can find out about him in a moment. Ed Sharp, Hamilton, Ontario, and Tough Tony Morelli, Brooklyn, New York. The first main event for the International Heavyweight Championship, the champion Sonny Myers, St. Louis, Missouri, versus the challenger Pancho Lopez out of Mexico City. 1 hour time limit, 2 out of 3 falls. The second main event, North American Championship, the champion Iron Mike DiBiase, Omaha, Nebraska, versus Anton Ripper Leone, Oyster Bay, Long Island, New York. I added the Long Island. Oyster Bay, New York. 2 out of 3 falls, 1 hour time limit.
Well, goddamn. Now I think at first when I heard the Sharp brothers, Ed Sharp, Mike Sharp, Ben Sharp, I said, was it maybe up the Northeast? Then Tommy Phelps became someone, I think, and I can't remember who. Then I hear Nick Roberts. Go ahead.
No, maybe I'm wrong. I was going to say, was he one of the wrestlers that became a preacher? Or am I thinking of someone else?
No, that's not who I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Nick Roberts would be most noted as being Nicola Roberts' father and a Texas mainstay wrestler and promoter, but that doesn't guarantee we're in Texas, because there's Joe Hamilton, who was all over the place early in his career.
I was right, because I have this in my collection. The record, that was what I was trying to say. The wrestling record, I Wrestled with God, before he was the Nature Boy Tommy Phelps, after Evangelist Tommy Phelps.
Okay. All right. I was thinking of the Gorgeous George ripoff guy.
Oh, that's another guy that
George
became a
Brandt.
preacher. Yeah, he became a preacher too, right? Yeah.
And then when he died, people say, "Oh, the original Gorgeous George has died," and his whole thing was built on a lie, not just the evangelism, but also the wrestling. I don't know who the fuck Dr. X O'Toole is. Sonny Myers was a Central States mainstay, but he at the same time wrestled early in his career all over the place. But then we go to Mike DiBiase, who was well known in Texas again, Ripper Leone, who later on would become an outlaw promoter in California, but at this time he was a wrestler. For Joe Hamilton to be on the card, it's got to be early 60s, because he main evented as an 18-year-old in Madison Square Garden with his brother Larry in 1959. We're in West Texas in 1962 or 3. I give up.
Never give up. I believe in you. We are in Amarillo, Texas, wrestling at its best. Thursday, September 29th, 1960.
I
don't know who Dr. X O'Toole is. There's a picture of a masked wrestler here, but it doesn't have information about that. I have to see what else I can find out. There's a few interesting things here. This is from apparently originally the Jack Pfeffer collection.
Because my God.
There's a big sticker stuck to the front of it that says managed by Jack Pfeffer. And it's on the front cover. Coming next week, October 6th, see in this arena in person the most incredible wrestling star of all, Tricky Ricky Starr, in ballet slippers. The man women rave about. Don't miss the world's greatest box office attraction. The man that sold out Madison Square Garden more than any other wrestler. The most amazing wrestling talent in the history of modern day wrestling. An economy-sized giant among Goliaths. 27 years old.
It's a good thing Pfeffer wasn't given over to hyperbole.
27 years old, 205 pounds, 5 feet 10 inches tall. The amazing Ricky Starr danced with the Midwestern Opera and Ballet Association, the Municipal Opera Company of St. Louis, 2 Broadway shows, Annie Get Your Gun and Paint Your Wagon, the Theater and Ballet Ruse de Monte Carlo. I don't know what the fuck this is. And then there's a comma and it ends. But that's Jack Pfeffer hyping us up.
Wait a minute. No, that's like the Patty Duke show. You know, Kathy adores the minuet, the ballet russe, and crepe Suzette.
Oh, shit,
but Patty's only seen a sights a girl can see from Brooklyn Heights. What a crazy pair.
Well, apparently, Ricky Starr, the sensational Madison Square Garden attraction, did all those things, and on the back cover,
he was a big attraction at that time, but I think Jack's laying it on a little thick there.
On the back cover is a picture of It's not the clearest of photos. It appears to be some sort of tractor or some kind of farm equipment with Happy Humphrey next to it. Coming Thursday, October 13th, the biggest freak in the world.
Wow.
The human blimp, Happy Humphrey, 750 pounds. His tremendous weight advantage makes big handicap for all opponents.
And this is written by people who liked him.
And then there's a list here, coming attractions. Ricky Starr, wrestling #1 box office attraction. The man women rave about. Boy, Pfeffer just wrote this shit over and over. Former ballet star, the most incredible wrestling star of all. Here Thursday, October 6th. Hans Blockbuster Schnabel.
Hans,
excuse me.
Hans
Blockbuster Schnabel.
He's never used Blockbuster Schnabel.
265-pound German assassin here October 6th. The human blimp, Humphrey, 750 pounds. Top novelty attraction in wrestling, coming October 13th. Doesn't that appeal more to the promoter than the fan? He's the top novelty attraction in wrestling?
Well, yeah, that is... There have always been a lot of promoters that would use terminology that meant something to them, but that wasn't ever used in real life. Well, Vince McMahon, that wasn't ever used in real life, but it meant something to them or whatever. And they try, and it's all hyperbole, whether it's the Bob Luces or the Jack Pfeffers or whatever. You kill, breed, violence, blood, that type of thing. Just hype.
Well, the world champion is Pat O'Connor, North American champ Iron Mike DiBiase, international champ Sonny Myers, the world tag team champions Nick Roberts and Jody Hamilton. Attention wrestling fans, our wrestling promoter, Doc Sarpolis, after serious consideration, has decided to disregard the National Wrestling Alliance advisory ruling that all future main events be one-fall matches. He is instead going back to his old policy of long-standing. Therefore, all main events will continue being the best 2 out of 3 falls with 1 hour time limit or to a finish. What's that about, baby facing the promoter to the fans?
Well, because especially in...
Who didn't want to lose their 2 out of 3 falls matches, isn't that interesting?
Well, in a lot of smaller territories, like even in the Tennessee territory or out in West Texas or down in the Gulf Coast, cards in the 60s, early 70s were 3 matches, and every match would be 2 out of 3 falls, so you'd get the full-length show, right? But at the same, you didn't have to pay any more wrestlers. They just wrestled longer. So, and when the NWA went to 1-fall matches with the whole thing, especially for the world title with Thesz and Rogers and trying to make sure everybody played ball, a lot of the local promoters didn't like that because they had trained their fans 2 out of 3. So guys could drop falls in a 2 out of 3 match, and it wasn't the same thing as getting beat. And then once the guys started figuring out that, well, even if we're going 2 out of 3, he's still beating me once, with a body slam or whatever, then that became a problem and blah, blah, blah.
All right, let's get one more. I'm looking through, I got a big pile here. I got to make sure, I got to get a list of what we've already done. I never want to...
You're bragging about the size of your pole or pile or whatever you just said.
I said pile.
There.
I didn't say pole.
Yeah. Well, you got that funny northern
Sicko,
accent.
Weirdo. What is that? Pole.
Museum.
All right, here we go. This program, the card, opening bout, Matador Mata, or Mata, I guess I should say, versus Sandor Akbar.
Sandor?
Sandor. Jack Daniels out of Newark versus Timmy Geohagen. Finishing out the preliminaries, Bulldog Pletchus versus Ronnie Etchinson. The semifinal, a tag team encounter, Nick Kozak and Ken Hollis versus Carl Von Bronner and Al Costello. And the main event, 2 out of 3 falls, 90-minute time limit. Kenji Shibuya versus Ernie Ladd.
Ooh, okay. Sandor Akbar would probably be Skandor Akbar, but it would be that is not his regular territory. And since he's in a preliminary, that was when he was wrestling and not when he was a manager. And he was a bigger card as a manager than as a wrestler. Don't know who Jack Daniels is, but Ronnie Etchison, Bulldog Danny Pletches, and Timothy Geohagen indicate that this is early 60s to mid 60s. Carl von Bronner and Al Costello were the internationals. At a period of time, Carl was not teaming with Kurt, and Costello, that's in between Roy Heffernan and Don Kent as Kangaroo partners. Kozak is a West Texas and Texas name from way back. Hollis, I don't know. And Shibuya versus Ladd, unless this was a very odd happenstance, Shibuya would have been the heel. Kenji Shibuya was one of the big Japanese heels of the 60s, and especially out in California, Northern California. But Ernie Ladd being the babyface would indicate that this was when he was still playing football and wrestling, and early in his career, which started in 63. I'm going to say this is 1967, and God damn it, how are you crossing me up and we're in Texas again? Because elsewise, it would almost think that it might have to be Northern California, but it doesn't look right for Northern California. So we're back in Texas somewhere in 1966 or 67. Possibly Houston?
Well, it's a good way to close out with a nice win for you.
Okay.
The card, Houston, Texas, Friday, January 6, 1967.
Boom!
The Gulf Athletic Club is the promoter, Mrs. Shirley Carringer, the assistant promoter. A tribute to a great promoter, a fine friend. Morris Siegel left a living legacy for sports fans.
This was right after Morris Siegel died and right before Paul Bosch took over officially.
He died in the early morning hours, Tuesday, December 27th, 1966. And it ended a gallant battle that had been going on since 1952 when he was stricken with his first heart attack.
Good Lord.
It's 50 years of sports promotion. And then if you look on the inside, I guess timing-wise, this is interesting here. Wrestling returns to TV tomorrow night, Channel 39. Tonight, a giant truck with the emblem of Channel 39, Houston's newest and brightest TV station, will be in place, putting portions of the action on tape.
I'm glad they're telling people what to look for if they want to vandalize the fucking vehicle.
Tomorrow night, on Channel 39 at 10 p.m., that tape will be shown to Houston wrestling fans. And on every Saturday night at this choice time in the foreseeable future, this program will be a big part of the TV scene, as it has for almost 17 years. Channel 39 is a UHF station. Don't let that confuse you. If you bought a TV set within the past 2.5 years, your set is then equipped to pick up UHF by law.
Yes, but that was changed in 1964 because the UHF TV stations were pitching a fit because most of the TV sets made in the 1950s did not. You had to get a converter, which I had one. We had one here in my mom's old black and white console TV. You had to get a converter to hook it up to get a UHF channel that's not between channel 2 and channel 13 because they were newer on the television front.
It may need a slight adjustment in antenna. If so, call a serviceman and he can fix it.
Get some aluminum foil and wrap it around your fucking uncle's fist and have him hold his arm in the air.
You know you want to see this. Hire a serviceman to come over and fix this right now. If you have an older set, then it is possible to buy a converter that attaches to your present set and will enable you to pick up 39 and any future UHF stations. The cost is in the $20 to $30 range. Your wrestling...
And by the way, we talked about inflation earlier. This is 1967. Your converter now would probably cost you about $150 with the rate of inflation from 1967 to get something so you would be able to have channels 13 through 83 on your television, finally.
Your wrestling will be telecast in color. Live wrestling will continue to be on Friday nights, but on television, it will be shown every Saturday. Tell your friends! Wrestling is back on TV. What do you know about that? What do you know about Houston losing TV?
Well, this all happens through periods of time in the long-running territories where...
That's where they lost TV in New York around this period of time,
We've talked about it in New York. It was 67 or 68 off top of my head that they... You know, when you've got a relationship with a station in the market and you've been on it for a while, and then they get a new program director or station manager or something changes, and then you have to go searching. That's, used to be what led to the end of a fucking market, a town for somebody's when they lost television if you couldn't get another station or if it was a significant downgrade. I truthfully haven't heard of Houston losing TV for any significant period of time in their history. Does it say how long there that they had been out? Was it a situation where maybe it was a seasonal thing and they had sports or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't say anything here, but, it's not we are going to be next week on a new network. It's we're back on TV on the new network. So we'll see what we can find out. That's interesting.
I think that probably something happened. They might have got a new station manager or a new program director, or sometimes it was the promotion. If you could get more from a secondary or a smaller station than you could being a little fish in the big station's pond in a market, you went there. For years, Live Atlanta Wrestling was on Channel 11. In Atlanta, which was a VHF station, and everybody could get it. But then they moved to Channel 17, WTCG, because the goddamn owner, this wacky guy named Ted Turner, really seemed to like that wrestling. And we were going to get preempted for network shit and blah, blah, blah. So those things can happen too.
Well, before we get out of here, on the topic of Houston, I just have this in the pile here.
Ernie Ladd, by the way, was a babyface in those days in Houston, especially because he played for the Houston Oilers at one point in time in the NFL.
I have a special wrestling ticket, Pass 1, from Houston, the City Auditorium, Friday, September 10th, 1954, 8:30 p.m. This pass and $1 plus federal tax is good for any ringside, what does that say? Ringside, box, or dress circle seat in allotted sections of the City Auditorium. Here is the card on this ticket, just a few matches. Tag Team Dynamite, Ricky Starr and Shane, Chene, that must be Larry Shane.
Oh, Leapin' Larry Shane.
Versus Adkison and Vansky.
Okay, that's got to be Jack Adkison, doesn't it?
54.
And Tiger Jack Vansky?
I think so. A second sensational 2 out of 3 fall main event. Joe Killer Christie versus Gentleman Ed Francis. And the main event, I'm going to read this verbatim, folks. Not my words, theirs. Valentine is out to make the Jap Shoeshine Boy quit wrestling. It will be a sizzler Johnny Valentine versus Duke Kiwanuka.
Oh, good Lord. A poor Duke, a shoeshine boy. I know he was humble and lovable, but really? So what was this was what year have we established that this would be?
Oh, this was 1954. This was September 10th, 1954.
Okay. Well, see, you didn't. Yeah, I thought you were telling me something in conjunction with the 67 Houston program, and I wasn't paying attention as to what to fucking think about that. Jack Atkinson hadn't become Fritz von Erich yet. I mentioned before I read you the program, his first appearance in the Dallas Sportatorium when he was still being billed as a Southern Methodist University graduate. But Johnny Valentine had only been in the business about 6-7 years at that point. He had been a main eventer forever. And Ed Francis would later on run your favorite territory.
He would run, of course, 50th State Big Time Wrestling in Hawaii. My people, I say hello to all of our friends on the Hawaiian Islands right now. The great Brian Last, Hawaiian Brian loves you. I think you know that. I got all the spirit and the soul running through me. See,
Kaka bro.
The secret is you talk like Jimmy Snuka. You don't have to make any sense. Just talk like that. No, but that was Guess the Program, and that was
it. Sure was. Guess what this program is, Brian?
I don't know.
Over.
Oh.
Folks, we'll be back in a few days with the drive-thru, and next week with the experience. SummerSlam is coming up. Who's going to win all these belts that have to change hands? We don't know, but we're going to find out and then tell you. That way you don't even have to bother with the whole thing. Brian, any closing thoughts for the audience?
We will see you on the drive-thru for lots of action. We'll talk about Dynamite, and we'll try to get more questions. Send songs. cornydrivethru@gmail.com.
And send me programs just for free. And otherwise, until we see you again, thank you, fuck you, and bye-bye, everybody.